Chapter 48:33. Chin Chu still looked at Little Bean tenderly. Dad is doing this for your own good. Dad is biased. He likes big sister and little brother, but he doesn't like me. Little Bean rolled her eyes and began to nitpick. Huamin couldn't stand it anymore and spoke up for Chin Chu. Little Bean, don't you feel guilty for framing your dad like this? Your big sister works from dawn to dusk, and your little brother goes to school and comes back only once in a while. You're the one who spends most of your time here. Think about it, what do you want? Don't you ask your dad to buy it for you? Then you save your own salary, New Year's money, and pocket money. What's worse, I heard that you wanted to give Buyuan a limited edition hover bike for his birthday last year, and it was your dad who paid for it. Why are you talking about this? Aren't I your biological daughter? If you don't give it to me, who do you give it to? Little Bean felt guilty when her mother started to dig up old scores. Everyone burst into laughter. Little Bean was the joker of the family, the joker. For so many years she had played this role, so it was impossible to say that Chin Chu was biased. Although Pudding was outstanding and Chin Guogua was obedient, Little Bean was the most popular and the best at flattering the whole family. She spent the most time at home. Although she was doing an internship at Southside, she still ate at home. Sometimes she was too lazy to drive, so she didn't even drive and sat in the passenger seat of her mother's car. When she wanted to eat dumplings at night, she called her grandma, and her grandparents wanted to make them themselves. During the holidays, Pudding was busy going on business trips, Chin Guogua was busy with his work-study program, and Little Bean swindled some money from her dad so she could go to the Maldives with her friends to enjoy the sun. So, the little girl was asking for trouble when she said that her dad was biased. Do you guys want coffee? I recently learned a new way to make it and it tastes really good. Do you want to try it? Little Bean tried to please everyone. Sis, you change your mind so fast. Chin Guogua rubbed his temples. I'm being nice. If you don't want it, then forget it. You let us drink coffee in the middle of the night. You really love us. You won't let us sleep. Pudding lowered her head and held her phone. She was checking the news to see if there was any news about Liao Mukin's fight. Everyone's waiting for Auntie and the others, so they won't go to bed too early. Little Bean said confidently. Huamin chuckled. Go on, 1 cup each. But don't try to extort money from us. Don't worry, I have enough pocket money recently. Besides, I won't blackmail you. After all, my auntie, that godly tycoon, will be here tonight. The pocket money you give is not even enough to fill the gaps between my auntie's teeth, okay? Little Bean loved Lu Yen as much as Pudding did. Ever since they were little, Lu Yen had spoiled them and gave them a lot of money. In the past few years, Lu Yen had given the twins hundreds of millions of gifts on their birthdays. There were all kinds of diamonds, watches, and bracelets. Huamin kept telling her not to waste money like this. His heart couldn't take it anymore. Chin Guogua also liked Lu Yen, but because he was a boy, he was introverted and didn't know how to express his feelings, so he didn't say it out loud. Little Bean used the excuse of making coffee for everyone and ran away so that they wouldn't continue to attack her. Chin Chu, on the other hand, discussed the German economy with his son. Huamin glanced at Pudding and said in a low voice, Come with me. Chapter 48:34. Pudding got up and followed her mother upstairs. Change into your home clothes. Don't dress so professionally. It's too tiring. Huamin took Pudding into her bedroom and found a set of cute, emerald green home clothes for her in her closet. Pudding obediently changed out of her mermaid dress and into her home clothes. Huamin carefully picked up Pudding's clothes. I'll take them to the laundry room first. I'll dry them tomorrow and put them in your closet. Thank you, Mom. Don't mention it. After Huamin came back from the laundry room, Pudding was still in the bedroom, sitting on the couch and playing with her phone. The two girls had lived separately since they were 6 years old to cultivate their independence. South Hill Manor had prepared separate rooms for them back then. The room they used to live in became Chin Guogua's room. When Huamin came back, he sat down beside his daughter. Have you been tired from work recently? I'm fine. Pudding put away her phone and looked at her mother. If you're under a lot of pressure, you can tell your dad to give out some of your work. Your aunt, your uncle, and your Uncle Yang can all do it. Huamin had always known that his eldest daughter was a workaholic and very career-oriented. He was afraid that she would be too tired. After all, she was still young. It's okay, Mom. I can take it, Pudding said casually. She didn't show any emotions on her face. It was hard to see emotions on her face. In this aspect, she was stronger than her parents. Even if her heart was in turmoil, she still looked calm on the surface. Huamin sometimes felt that Pudding was very much like him when he was young. But he didn't want her to be too much like him. After all, his stubbornness could be quite hurtful sometimes. After a pause, Huamin lowered his head and didn't ask any more questions. Mom, what do you want to say? Just say it. Pudding could tell that her mother had something to say. Even if she didn't say it, she knew. Today your Auntie Xiaowei came and talked to me in private. She said that she doesn't know what happened between you and Yunchu back then. He hasn't come back for years. You know, during the Spring Festival your Auntie Xiaowei and her family always go to the States to visit Yunchu and spend the Spring Festival with him. Actually, we elders shouldn't ask about the things between you two. But Pudding, your Auntie Xiaowei and your Uncle Wei are very very good friends of mine. Even if you and Yunchu don't like each other, it's good to be friends. As expected, Pudding knew that something that even her mother was hesitant to say was not a good thing. Very few people dared to mention Wei Yunchu in front of Pudding. When Wei Yunchu went abroad, Pudding woke up with a fever and Chinchu forbade anyone from talking about it. Now that a few years had passed, everything seemed so peaceful. Today Xiaowei came with red eyes and said that she hoped that Pudding and Yunchu could resolve the misunderstanding. Even if they didn't like each other and didn't want to be lovers, they could still be friends. Wei Yunchu was sure that there was a barrier in his heart. Otherwise he wouldn't have stayed away for so many years. Wu Yuan occasionally contacted Wei Yunchu and called him. Pudding vaguely heard from Little Bean that Wei Yunchu had changed a lot. He didn't like to talk and express himself more than before. Pudding was sad to hear it, but she didn't know what to do. Now that her mother brought it up again, she naturally had mixed feelings. Mom, Wei Yunchu and I, it's not what you think. We didn't become enemies. Maybe we're just not suitable for each other. If he comes back now, I'll treat him like a normal friend. Don't worry, I won't disrespect Auntie Xiaowei. Are you and Yunchu together because of Tian Tian? Huamin couldn't help but ask. Chapter 48-35. Other people didn't know Tian Tian's true colors, but Huamin did. He had experienced it when he was little. Tian Tian pretended to let go of her past. However, Huamin knew that Hui Yanyan had left a deep impression on her. She wouldn't act as if nothing had happened. Only Wei Ying and her husband would believe her. Almost all the elders knew that Tian Tian liked Wei Yunchu because she was too obvious about it. Although Tian Tian called Wei Ying mom, she wasn't Wei Ying's daughter, so she wasn't related to Wei Yunchu. It wasn't impossible for them to be together. However, Huamin had seen that Yunchu didn't like Tian Tian very much. He even disliked her. However, he didn't know what happened a few years ago that made Tian Tian take advantage of the loophole and go abroad with Wei Yunchu to study abroad. In the past few years, Wei Yunchu and Tian Tian didn't come back to China and didn't keep in touch with these people. Therefore he didn't know how they were doing. Today when Xiaowei chatted with Huamin, she made it clear that she wouldn't let Yunchu and Tian Tian be together. No matter who Yunchu married, he wouldn't marry Tian Tian, so he asked Huamin to explain it to Pudding. Huamin knew that his daughter had a lot on her mind and didn't dare to say too much. Mom, it's not like that. Tian Tian didn't play a big role in this. Yunchu doesn't like Tian Tian and won't like her in the future. I know all this. Then why did you? Huamin was even more confused. Mom, let me handle this myself. I really don't know how to explain it to you. Okay. I'm just worried that you'll feel wronged and keep it to yourself. But I know my daughter is the best. You'll take care of yourself. Pudding nodded slightly. At this moment, Little Bean's squeal came from downstairs. Oh my god. Auntie's private jet landed at the airport at the top of the mountain? So cool. Then Little Bean dashed out like a gust of wind. Hearing that Lu Yen was here, Huamin and Pudding hurried downstairs so they didn't continue the conversation. Lu Yen was supposed to arrive during the day since she had sent people to Germany to protect Qing Guogua on his way back. Later on, he heard that he had something to do in Malaysia, so he went to Southeast Asia at the last minute. They arrived in Sea City in the middle of the night and landed at the top of South Hill Manor. What was that saying again? The lives of the rich were varied and the lives of the poor were roughly the same. Lu Yen was one of those super rich people who could do different things every day for 365 days. She could do anything she wanted. It was still a short distance from the top of the mountain to South Hill Manor, so Chin Chu arranged for the driver to drive a Lincoln limousine up to pick them up so that everyone could sit together. Huamin's eyes turned red when he saw Lu Yen from afar. Over the years, every time Lu Yen came, she would feel very touched. Lu Yen only wore a black leather jacket, dark blue jeans and marten boots. She was still as unique as ever. Her long hair was down, and she was dressed in a retro style like a famous Hong Kong celebrity from the 90s. Still, she was stunning. Behind Lu Yen was the silver-haired Xiao Fei. Beside him were two girls who looked exactly the same. They were about 11 or 12 years old and wore the same black windbreaker and black marten boots with a lot of nails. Then they looked exactly the same as the two girls. Oh my god. That's Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuan. They're so tall? Little Bean exclaimed. Chapter 48:36. When Lu Yen and her family arrived at South Hill Manor, it was already 11:30 p.m. Other than Lu Yen and her family, they also brought a few bodyguards with them. As expected, they were a family of gangsters. They all dressed like gangsters. Huamin had seen the Qiao twins many times, but he had only seen Little Bean and Pudding a few times. So, when he saw that the two sisters were already 12 years old and were so tall, he was excited and surprised. When Lu Yen came out of the nightmare, she went crazy looking for Qiao Fei. Qiao Fei was kidnapped by Qiao Nan and the rebels in the Golden Triangle and was kept under house arrest in the Golden Triangle for more than 3 months. Later, Qiao Fei escaped by himself and Lu Yen regained him. Scared out of her wits, she married Qiao Fei immediately. But because she was still young, she didn't have children immediately. After 2 years of marriage, she got drunk at her wedding anniversary and got pregnant unexpectedly. After Professor Lu and Huamin persuaded her, Lu Yen decided to be a mother and have children. No one expected that she would be able to give birth to 2 daughters at once, just like her sister. Qiao Fei was overjoyed. He immediately turned into a slave to his daughters and was no longer as cold as before. Her sister's 2 daughters were named Qin Zhaozhao and Qin Mumu, which meant that they would accompany each other day and night. Against everyone's objections, Lu Yen named her 2 daughters Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuan, which meant reunion. Lu Yan's arrival excited Huamin and his family. Qiao Fei and Qin Chu were good friends. When they came back, they went to the study to drink tea and chat. Lu Yen gave Huamin a bear hug and almost pressed her sister to the ground. The sisters were very affectionate when they met. Huamin prepared supper, cakes and fruits for his 2 nieces. Pudding and Little Bean also ate with them. The dining room downstairs was also very lively. "Has Dad contacted you recently?" Huamin asked Lu Yen. "No, I don't know where the old man is. But don't worry, he'll definitely come on Pudding and Little Bean's coming-of-age ceremony." Lu Yen knew her dad well and knew he wouldn't miss such a big event. Qin Guogua stood behind Huamin, tall and handsome. Lu Yen liked her nephew very much and her face was full of love. "Yao, why don't you eat something?" Lu Yen pointed at the table. "I want to maintain my figure and not follow in my second sister's footsteps," Qin Guogua said righteously. Lu Yen burst out laughing. Little Bean glared at her brother angrily. "Shut up, you little brat. Do you want to die by slandering me everywhere?" Before Qin Guogua could say anything, Xiao Tuanchuan said, "Sister Little Bean, you're a bit overweight. You can't keep getting fatter. No boy likes fat people. Fat people don't have spring." Little Bean, at this moment Xiao Yuan, who had been silent the whole time, added in a serious tone, "That's right, Sister Little Bean. Soon you'll know that no one knows if your lipstick is Chanel or Dior, Saint Laurent or Givenchy. No one can tell if your belt is DG or LV, if you have money or cards in your wallet, or if your watch is Vacheron Constantin or Cartier. However, your face is big and small, your legs are thick and thin, and your butt is round or flat. Everyone can see it clearly from 3 meters away." Little Bean, me. Xiao Yuan's words pushed the atmosphere to the climax. Even Pudding, who was always cold and arrogant, burst out laughing. Little Bean was the only one left in the room. "Don't be like this. You 2 bully me as soon as you come. It's not fair." Little Bean felt wronged. Chapter 48:37. Yuan brilliant. Pudding gave her a thumbs up. It was clear that although the 2 demons were only 12 years old, their intelligence was far beyond that of a 12-year-old. They were famous for their high IQ and EQ. Lu Yen once joked that if there was an international IQ and EQ ranking competition, would the top 10 all belong to their family? Pudding, Little Bean, Tuan, Yuan, and Guogua would all be in the top 5, right? Brilliant? She's just a fart. Little Bean rolled her eyes. "Big brother Yao, do you want to play a game?" The oldest, Xiao Tuanchuan, liked to be active, while the second, Xiao Yuan, liked to be quiet and didn't talk much. "What game?" Qin Guogua had a feeling it wasn't a good thing. "Close combat. Do you want to play? The loser has to give 100,000 yuan of pocket money to the winner," Xiao Tuanchuan said. "Wow, that's a big bet. This is going to be fun." Little Bean instantly forgot about the unpleasantness just now and was eager to watch the show. Huamian and Lu Yen looked at each other and smiled. They both knew the kids had a sense of propriety when they joked. Even if it was close combat, it was just a friendly competition. There wouldn't be any problems. "It sounds like you'll definitely win." Qin Guogua leaned against the pillar with a toothpick in his mouth. His expression was calm, just like Huamin's. Yes, I'm confident. Xiao Tuanchuan raised his chin. Big brother, you have to be careful. Xiao Tuanchuan's skills have improved by leaps and bounds. I've already lost 800,000 yuan. Xiao Yuanyuan reminded him kindly. 800,000 yuan? You've lost 8 times. You've never won? Little Bean looked at Xiao Yuanyuan. No, but we tied once when my sneak attack succeeded, Xiao Yuanyuan said. That's not optimistic, little brother. You have to think carefully, ha. If you lose 100,000 yuan, you might as well buy me a Black Swan limited edition black diamond cake to eat. I can still accept your kindness. If you fight with Tuan Tuan and lose, not only will you get beaten up, you will also lose 100,000 yuan. The gains do not make up for the losses. Little Bean gloated. However, Pudding glanced at her little brother and said, Little brother, you and Tuan Tuan fight. If you lose, I'll pay for you. Fuck. Why are you so nice to him? You're biased towards Qin Zhaozhao. Little Bean reached out to scold Pudding. Because I know my little brother won't lose. Pudding was full of confidence in her little brother. Whoa, the atmosphere is so tense. I really want to watch the competition. Lu Yin watched the kids bicker with each other and her interest was piqued. Xiao Tuanchuan's moves were a combination of Qiao Fei's and Lu Yan's moves. Xiao Yuanyuan didn't like to learn combat. If it wasn't for her mother saying that she had to protect herself and was afraid of being kidnapped, she really didn't want to learn at all. Thank you for your help, big sister. But I also feel that I might not necessarily lose. Qin Guogua stretched lazily. Logically speaking, he hated sparring with others the most. In Germany, there were a few black people who kept provoking him in school, but he didn't do anything because he hated trouble the most. The real reason why he agreed to spar with Xiao Tuanchuan wasn't because of the 100,000 yuan bet. It was because he knew that Xiao Tuanchuan was very strong and had powerful moves, so he really wanted to spar with him to test the waters. He was interested in sparring with the strong. As a result, just like that, in the middle of the night, a group of people walked out and arrived at the lawn in front of them. Qin Chu and Xiao Fei heard the news in the study on the second floor and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window to watch the battle. Xiao Tuanchuan took off his windbreaker and threw it to the side. Every move was clean and neat. Chapter 48:38. Big brother Yao, I won't go easy on you. I hope you'll do the same. Xiao Tuanchuan chuckled. Don't worry. Bring it on. In just 2 seconds, Xiao Tuanchuan rushed up and attacked fiercely. Little Bean was dazzled by her moves. Wow. She's so fast. She's so good at kung fu. I'm so jealous. Little Bean was drooling with envy. She thought she and Pudding were very good at taekwondo because they were 9th dan black belts. At least she could take down 4 men by herself. However, compared to Xiao Tuanchuan, they were like children playing house. My sister is indeed very strong. She can fight with Uncle Ali for 15 minutes now. Xiao Yuanyuan smiled slightly. Little Bean and Pudding were both surprised. What level was Ali at? What level was he at? He was a top mercenary in Lu Yan's team. He had killed more people than they had eaten bread. Xiao Tuanchuan was only 12 years old. Although she was already 165 meters tall, she was still a 12-year-old child. It was already very good that she could fight with Ali for 15 minutes. Looking back, they found that although Xiao Tuanchuan attacked fiercely, Qin Guogua was in a passive position. However, if one observed carefully, they would find that although the attacks were fierce, they also consumed a lot of energy. Although Qin Guogua was in a passive position, he dealt with it easily and didn't even pant. Qin Chu and Xiao Fei saw it clearly from the second floor. Tuanchuan is too impatient. She's not as calm as Yao, Xiao Fei said. Tuanchuan didn't use her ultimate move. It's hard to say who will win. Qin Chu thought they couldn't underestimate Xiao Tuanchuan. After all, she was the child of Xiao Fei and Lu Yan. The child of a tiger couldn't be a cat, right? Sure enough, seeing that her fierce attacks didn't work and Qin Guogua was dealing with it easily, Xiao Tuanchuan immediately changed her tactics. She changed her attack style and forced Qin Guogua to take the initiative. 5 minutes later, they were still evenly matched, but Qin Guogua wasn't as relaxed as before. Xiao Tuanchuan, on the other hand, was still full of energy and kept attacking. Her fast attack style made people highly vigilant, because as long as they let their guard down, they would lose everything. Little Bean was very excited and kept talking to Xiao Yuanyuan. I don't want to tell you guys that you came at the right time. Tomorrow I'll introduce you guys to a friend. My auntie's son is Tang Tianjiao. He's very naughty. You guys can play with him. I'm sure you'll win him over. Xiao Yuanyuan didn't say anything after hearing that. She just smiled mysteriously. After Lu Yan gave birth to the baby, she had stopped taking orders. She had been taking in business for the past few years. Even so, the combined wealth of Lu Yan and Xiao Fei was more than enough to last them 3 lifetimes. After Lu Yan retired, she disappeared from the world and lived in seclusion with her subordinates on an island in Xanadu. Occasionally she would come back to visit Huamin. As for the 2 children of the Qiao family, they did not go to school in Europe because of their special identities. Instead, they went back to Russia and received the education of the best military school. The old master of the Qiao family treasured the 2 children. After Qiao Fei escaped, Lu Yan issued a death warrant and killed Qiao Nan. Her relationship with the Qiao family deteriorated. So, Qiao Fei lived with Lu Yan on the island until his children went to school. His father was old and considered handing over the position of the head of the Qiao family. They enjoyed the happiness of family, so, few people knew about the identity of the twins and even fewer people had seen them in person. Qiao Tuanchuan was arrogant and flamboyant, while Qiao Yuanyuan was low-key and unpredictable. They were almost a miniature version of Lu Yan and Xiao Fei. It's over. I think Yao is going to lose. Huamin was scared out of his wits. Chapter 48-39. Lu Yan smiled slightly. It's okay, sis. My nephew won't look bad even if he loses. Do you know how hard Tuanchuan trains every day? Lu Yan knew her daughter very well. Qiao Tuanchuan had inherited Lu Yan's iron will and took combat and military equipment as her favorite hobby. Qiao Tuanchuan was only 12 years old. When Lu Yan was 12 years old, she didn't seem to have such a mature mind. At that time, she was just a noisy little girl who ran around and was hunted down by her enemies. Qiao Tuanchuan, on the other hand, was studying at an advanced military academy in Russia. She didn't receive any special treatment because of her identity. Instead, she received more intensive training than others. Qiao Tuanchuan was a tough girl. Therefore, Lu Yan didn't think Qin Guoguo would look bad if he lost to her cousin. Huamin didn't say anything. It was just a competition between the kids and he thought it didn't matter who won or lost. However, just as Qin Guoguo was about to lose, she suddenly changed her moves. Their speed was simply beyond the limits of humans, and their footsteps suddenly became light and graceful. Suddenly, 5 or 6 more figures appeared. Qiao Tuanchuan was confused and didn't know what to do. There's a chance. Pudding crossed her arms and smiled slightly when she saw the situation change. Qiao Yuanyuan stood beside Pudding and didn't say anything. She just smiled as if she was smiling all the time. It was said that this girl had been hiding a dagger behind her smile since she was little. She might smile gently at you 1 second and then stab you in the next. Not many people knew about Lu Yan's twins. After all, they had special identities and weird personalities. If Huamin and Qin Chu's twins were little demons, then Lu Yan and Xiao Fei's twins were little monsters. Mei's fist. Lu Yan was surprised. Chinese martial arts were extensive and profound. Although it had been lost for a long time, it didn't mean it was extinct. Wing Chun Yi Wen Xiaoyao Fan, Mei's fist, Mantis kick, and Drunken fist were still circulating in the martial arts circles. Lu Yan had once learned Tai Chi and studied it on a Taoist mountain. However, she felt that it was too gentle and slow. It didn't suit her impatient personality. After all, Lu Yan didn't practice martial arts to strengthen her body but to kill with every move. So she gave up. What Qiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan had learned were authentic military combat techniques. They were fast and accurate. Qin Yuyao also learned it, but he saw that he was not as good as Qiao Tuanchuan. At the last moment he changed his move. He used a very ancient and almost lost traditional martial art. It was indeed unexpected. Qiao Tuanchuan originally thought that this was a plot that only existed in movies and novels, but it actually appeared here. Qiao Tuanchuan also didn't know what to do. He continued to use his own military fighting techniques, but found that it was useless against his cousin. His method was to use 4 tails to defeat 1,000 caddies. In the end, after Qiao Tuanchuan tried to attack for 3 minutes, she gave up completely. In the last move, Qin Guoguo's expeditious steps caused the little girl to feel dizzy. She wasn't paying attention and was strangled by Qin Guoguo. I lost. Qiao Tuanchuan spread out his hands. He lost without hesitation. The little girl was very courageous and wasn't a sore loser. Yao, who did you learn Mei's fist from? Lu Yan walked over and rubbed Qin Guoguo's head lovingly. As far as Lu Yan knew, her sister, brother-in-law, and even her father didn't know this kind of fist technique. Qin Guoguo used it so skillfully that he must have learned it for a long time. Chapter 48-40. Qin Yuyao lowered his head shyly. 5th Grandpa taught me. Master Wu? Lu Yan was stunned and so was Huamin. Guogua explained. Fifth grandpa said that he would teach me a set of boxing techniques to strengthen my body. I didn't think much of it, I thought it was something like the 5 animal frolics. After learning it, I realized that this boxing technique was actually very powerful, but I've never shown it before. If Tuanchuan's attack wasn't so powerful today and I couldn't handle it, I might not have used it. Guogua's words had acknowledged his cousin's valiance and strength. This made Xiao Tuanchuan very happy, and her impression of her cousin improved. Master Wu is really an expert. It seems like I'll have to learn from him later. Hearing that Master Wu still had so many tricks up his sleeve, Lu Yen immediately had an idea. Huamian hurriedly stopped him. Stop it. You're already retired, why are you still learning those things? With your current strength, no one is a match for you. Stop being so smug and enjoy life. Don't do things like playing with knives and guns. I know, sis. Lu Yen said coquettishly. The person she liked the most in the world was probably her sister. She liked her even more than her father. Huamin was mature and acted like an older sister. Whether it was his biological sister, Lu Yen, or his biological brother, Jixin, who was not related by blood, it was the same. Until now, Huamin hadn't told Jixin and Yang Meirong the truth. She felt that it was a white lie. After all, it didn't matter if they were related by blood or not, because she already treated them as her real family. As soon as Lu Yen got off the plane, Xiao Tuanchuan gave her cousin a show of strength, which shocked everyone. Fortunately, Guogua wasn't someone to be trifled with. He was able to withstand it and counterattack beautifully. 12:30 p.m., in the winery of South Hill Manor, Lu Yan's family and Huamin's family had a small gathering in the spacious basement of the winery. In order not to disturb everyone who was sleeping soundly, the two families drank red wine and chatted. Qin Chu rarely cooked and prepared a sumptuous meal of steak and pasta for everyone. The red wine in the winery was even more casually drunk. Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan also very impolitely picked 2 bottles, the price was not cheap. Pudding seemed to have something on her mind the whole night and didn't really let go. Even when she talked and laughed, there was a hint of something on her mind. While everyone was eating happily, Xiao Tuanchuan walked over and put his arm around Pudding's shoulder. Sister Pudding, do you have something on your mind? What do you think? Pudding knew that this girl was very smart and wasn't as easy to fool as Little Bean. If I ask this, I must have noticed something. Tell me what? Wei Yinchu? Liao Mukin? Xiao Tuanchuan's words were heavy. Pudding licked her lips. You're well informed. Of course. When we were at the military academy, our first class was intelligence gathering. We had to gather information that was useful to us. When I was free, I would pay attention to the domestic news and see some reports. So, after I found out that you took over GK Entertainment, I took extra care of Liao Mukin. Xiao Tuanchuan's voice wasn't loud, but she knew that Pudding didn't want others to know about this. In fact, Xiao Tuanchuan wasn't only interested in Pudding's private life. Sometimes she even helped Little Bean track Gao Buyuan's whereabouts in Jing City. With her hacking skills, she could directly hack into Gao Buyuan's school network and monitor who he was in contact with in school and whether he had fallen in love with other girls. Of course, she didn't do this kind of boring stuff often. She only did it occasionally for fun. She even knew Qin Guogua's situation in Germany like the back of her hand. Lu Yen once said that Xiao Tuanchuan would take over her mother's business and manage the legitimate business and mercenary group. Xiao Yuanyuan would take over the Qiao family business after Qiao Fei's father retired. The two sisters had a clear division of labor. Chapter 48-41. After hearing her words, Pudding pinched Xiao Tuanchuan's little face. Okay. I know I can't hide anything from you. Why do I feel like you're more and more like Black Widow from the Avengers? No. That name is so unlucky. I don't want to be Black Widow. I'll have countless handsome men in the future. You're so young but you have big dreams. Pudding laughed. Don't change the topic. You haven't answered me yet. I actually have another question. Pudding, you're not obsessed with looks. You shouldn't like a high-profile guy like Liao Mukin. So, can you tell me why you've been taking care of him for the past 2 years? Xiao Tuanchuan played with the lighter in her hand and asked Pudding in a low voice. She had been curious about this for a long time and had done a lot of research on Liao Mukin, but she couldn't find anything. However, this didn't seem like Pudding's style. After a while, Pudding sighed slightly. He's like an old friend of mine. An old friend? Don't tell me he's your idol in kindergarten? No. Then where's your old friend? You can go find the real one. Why are you looking for a fake? Xiao Tuanchuan didn't know much about relationships because she had never liked a boy, so she didn't know what it was like. She couldn't figure it out with theory. My old friend is gone. Pudding was very sad. Hearing her words, Xiao Tuanchuan immediately understood her cousin. She patted her cousin's shoulder and comforted her. Let bygones be bygones. Life is just a long-distance train. Sooner or later we'll get off and you'll finally see your old friend at the terminal. Pudding nodded. What about Wei Yunchu? Cousin. I heard you two were childhood friends. We haven't seen each other in 5 years. I don't even know what he's like now. Pudding smiled sadly. Pudding's personality was very similar to Qin Chu's in many ways. Qin Chu could endure being abroad for 7 years without looking for Huamin. Of course, Pudding could also ignore Wei Yunchu's situation for 5 years. She didn't even pay attention to Weibo or Instagram, let alone see his photos. Xiao Tuanchuan leaned close to Pudding's ear and whispered, if it's because of that woman called Tian Tian, I can help you kill her. It's a piece of cake. Pudding was not surprised that Xiao Tuanchuan would have such an idea, and she knew that she was definitely not joking. After all, Xiao Tuanchuan had killed people before. Growing up in the background of Lu Yen and Xiao Fei, she wasn't a flower in a greenhouse. Pudding was already used to bloodshed, so she only needed to nod her head. Then Tian Tian would disappear from this world at any moment. But she wouldn't do that. No, it's not as simple as Tian Tian between us. Don't do anything to her. It's my own problem. I haven't adjusted my mentality yet. Xiao Tuanchuan was about to say something when Little Bean yelled from afar. Pudding Tuanchuan, come and have some steak. The two smiled tacitly and didn't continue the conversation. Instead they went back to their seats. Lu Yan's arrival brought a smile to Huamin's face. He hadn't been this happy in a long time. Sis, are you still going to be that lousy director? Is it fun? Is being a lousy doctor your lifelong dream? Lu Yan asked Huamin as she ate her steak. In fact, she didn't want her sister to continue working here. She hoped that her sister would visit her more often. I'm used to it. After all these years, I have developed a deep affection for Southside. Huamin smiled. When Dad comes tomorrow, you can invite him to be a special professor at your hospital. He's already so old, but he still runs around the world and makes people worry. Then Lu Yan looked around the room smugly. Kids, what do you think of this idea? Chapter 48-42. Little Bean nodded first. That's a great idea. I support you, Auntie. After all these years, Little Bean, you still love to flatter people. Xiao Yuan chuckled. Go away. I'm serious. I really want Grandpa to stay. Little Bean was overjoyed at the thought of Grandpa staying with her. I don't agree. I want Grandpa to go to Russia, Xiao Tuanchuan said domineeringly. It's good for Grandpa to stay with me in Germany. He can do some research on my project. Qin Guogua also began to fight for favor. You guys all have your own reasons. That's enough. Don't dream about it. Let's wait for your grandpa to come and see where he likes to stay, Huamin said. Xiao Fei suddenly had a flash of inspiration and had a suggestion. Since the atmosphere is so good, why don't we do this? Tomorrow Daddy will come over. You all can show off your skills and show your grandfather what you're capable of. Then, whoever can persuade him with their skills can stay there. Lu Yin secretly pinched Xiao Fei. Why are you so mean? You know Dad likes people who are good at medicine. Out of all the kids, Yuan is the best. Aren't you trying to steal her from your sister's family? Xiao Yuan was full of confidence. She looked at her parents with a smile and didn't say anything. If one were to say that Huamian's medical skills had reached a freakish level, then Xiao Yuan was like the new waves of the Yangtze River overtaking the old. It was said that Xiao Yuan could make all kinds of fever medicine, cold medicine, and anti-inflammatory medicine by herself since she was 5. When she was 8, she could dissect corpses by herself and make perfect incisions. She was someone that many famous medical schools in the world fought over. However, Lu Yin had too many enemies and didn't want her daughter to go abroad. She could only send her to the Russian military academy. Xiao Tuanchuan specialized in military equipment and Xiao Yuan was a military doctor. So, at 12 years old she was already an excellent doctor. Professor Lu would personally guide her every year. The little girl's medical skills were perfect. So, Xiao Fei's suggestion was indeed unfair. Little Bean was unhappy when she heard her auntie say that. Little Bean was also a medical student, but she wasn't as good as Xiao Yuan. She had just finished all the courses in advance and worked as an intern with her mother at Southside. Auntie, this is really unfair. How about this? Let my mom participate as well. If Grandpa thinks that my mom's medical skills are better than Yuan's, she can stay at South Hill Manor. You're a smart little girl. You're good at scheming. Lu Yin was amused. The night snack passed in laughter. It was not until 3 o'clock in the morning that everyone returned to their rooms. Pudding took a shower and went back to bed. It was almost dawn. Just as she was about to sleep with him, she received a WeChat message. Morning boss. One look at the tone and she knew that it was from Liao Mukin. Pudding, it's really early. What are you doing this morning instead of sleeping? Liao Mukin, I just came back from my morning run. Pudding, so you were too excited from running and couldn't sleep, so you harassed the boss? Liao Mukin, haha, I wouldn't dare. I'm afraid that my boss will deduct my salary. Pudding, good. Go to sleep. Liao Mukin, boss, didn't you give me a day off? I'll rest for a few days. Pudding, what's wrong? You don't want to? Liao Mukin, no. I'm bored at home. How about we go hiking together tomorrow? I heard that the maple leaves on Dragon Tiger Mountain are all red and beautiful. Pudding, so you think I'm free? I'm free to go hiking with you? Chapter 48-43. Liao Mukin, I can wait for you to get off work. Let's go together and see the night view. Pudding, I have a lot of guests at my house. You know how busy I am these days. Liao Mukin, I know your coming-of-age ceremony. Pudding, I'm going to bed now. Pudding didn't continue talking to Liao Mukin about the coming-of-age ceremony because she was still wondering if she should ask him to come. She definitely couldn't go hiking. Xiao Tuanchuan had been right for the past 2 years. Pudding was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She had taken care of Liao Mukin a lot. If it weren't for GK Entertainment support and money, Liao Mukin wouldn't have become so popular. In Pudding's eyes, Liao Mukin was a very promiscuous person who liked to flirt with girls. It was said that before he became famous, he had countless scandals at school. After he became famous, he flirted with all kinds of popular actresses and formed a couple. Although he didn't have a real girlfriend yet, Pudding knew that he didn't lack women. She even often scolded him for looking weak. Liao Mukin didn't seem very attentive to Pudding. He would occasionally tease his boss, but sometimes he would seriously ask her out. However, Pudding almost never agreed. Apart from work, she wouldn't have too much contact with this guy. The next morning, Pudding had a meeting in the morning, so she ate breakfast with Qin Chu and left early. When they left, no one was up yet. Pudding drove the Lamborghini while Qin Chu sat in the passenger seat. The father and daughter looked very handsome. At the entrance of GK, Dad, you can go back to the office first. I'll go to the publicity department to check the schedule. I'll see you in the conference room. Okay. Qin Chu nodded and said goodbye to his daughter at the door. He went straight to the top floor and she went to the publicity department. Pudding didn't expect to hear such explosive news as soon as she walked in. Perhaps the employees didn't expect her to come so early. As soon as Pudding walked to the door, she heard 2 women's voices. President Qin suppressed the news of Liao Mukin getting into a fight at a bar. Even if the media heard about it, they didn't dare to expose it. I heard President Qin even gave Liao Mukin a break. Yeah, I also heard that Liao Mukin got into a fight because of President Qin. Really? Are you jealous? I don't know. Anyway, I heard that one of the people in the bar was from a prestigious family. After drinking, he kept bragging that he wanted to sleep with President Qin. He even said that if he couldn't sleep with her, he would force himself on her. Liao Mukin has feelings for President Qin, so of course he wouldn't listen to such words. He rushed up and I heard that he gave the guy a concussion. Oh my God, this guy is so hardworking, but President Qin doesn't like him. No matter how famous he is, he's just an actor. President Qin is one of the heirs of GK and has a high chance of taking over his position in the future. He's a billionaire, good-looking, and has a great personality. I don't think Liao Mukin is good enough for President Qin. Pudding didn't continue listening. She just felt that it was because of her that Liao Mukin got into a fight that day. However, she still spoke ill of him, so she did feel a little guilty. His good intentions seemed to have been taken for granted. Pudding quietly left the room and didn't enter the publicity department. She didn't want to be embarrassed. She sighed slightly and called Liao Mukin's agent. After learning the whole story, she felt even more conflicted. She was nice to Liao Mukin because he looked like Suyu. However, if Liao Mukin fell in love with her because of this, then, she didn't want to see that happen. After all, she didn't like him. At the entrance of the Sea City Airport, Jiang Xiaowei parked her black Porsche Cayenne on the side of the road. The handsome boy, who was wearing a black sunscreen and carrying a BV travel bag, slowly took off his sunglasses. Son, get in the car. Jiang Xiaowei's eyes were full of motherly love. Wei Yunqiu returned to China for the first time in 5 years. Chapter 48-44. Wei Yunchu opened the door to the passenger seat, threw his travel bag into the back seat, and left quietly with Jiang Xiaowei. Other than Jiang Xiaowei, no one knew about Wei Yunchu's return. He didn't inform anyone in advance, not even when he was drinking with Qin Guoguo in Germany. Why would someone who hadn't come back for 5 years suddenly come back? The answer was obvious. It was for the twins' coming-of-age ceremony. Or rather, Wei Yunchu wanted to attend Pudding's 18th birthday. Does Pudding know you're back? Of course not. Mom, don't tell anyone. You want to give her a surprise? Jiang Xiaowei was in a good mood as she drove with her son back. Wei Yunchu pursed his lips. Actually, I don't know if my return is a surprise or a shock to her. Son, don't say that. Actually, between you and Pudding, Mom, let us solve our own problems. Hearing her son's words, Jiang Xiaowei knew that her son didn't want the elders to interfere and didn't want to put Pudding in a difficult position. Where's Tian Tian? She came back early and didn't go to my aunt's house? Wei Yunchu pointed at Wei Ying's house. Jiang Xiaowei froze. No. I saw your aunt yesterday and she said Tian Tian was in Germany. Wei Yunchu didn't look surprised. That's her business. He never cared about Tian Tian. 5 years ago Wei Yunchu went abroad. That night, Tian Tian made a last-minute decision and Xin Mingxi spent a lot of money to help her with the troublesome procedures. Over the years, everyone knew that Xin Mingxi was good to Tian Tian because of Hui Yanyan's death. After all, Hui Yanyan was in Xin Mingxi's hands for Wei Ying. So that couple always felt guilty for Hui Yanyan's orphan. That was why she had a good life all these years. All the elders knew that Tian Tian liked Wei Yunchu. But only Pudding and Wei Yunchu knew that Tian Tian didn't really like Wei Yunchu. She just liked to compete with Pudding. In short, she liked whatever Pudding liked. Over the years, she followed Pudding's hairstyle. Pudding was wearing the same style of clothes as her, and she wanted to buy the same clothes. Tian Tian had changed from a scheming bitch to a scheming bitch because of her desire to compete with others. That was why Wei Yunchu liked her. Wei Yunchu lived in his own luxurious apartment in the United States. There were maids, butlers, and bodyguards. It was heavily guarded. Tian Tian, on the other hand, lived in the single apartment on campus with other students. Because they weren't in the same department, they didn't see each other often. Occasionally Tian Tian would come to find Wei Yunchu, but he would avoid meeting her. Later he heard that Tian Tian was very close to a foreigner and they even moved out to live together. Not long after, he was beaten to the point that he was hospitalized. However, he didn't dare to tell his family about it. It was Wei Yunchu who brought the bodyguards to send her to the hospital and beat up her violent boyfriend. Perhaps out of gratitude, Tian Tian didn't stick to Wei Yunchu as much after that. In school she got along well with the other Chinese students. He had heard about Tian Tian's return to China from others. It seemed that not only did she come back, but she also didn't tell her family. This woman was really something. Do you want to go home first or go to your dad's company? Jiang Xiaowei tilted her head and asked her son. Before Wei Yunchu could speak, the female host's voice sounded on the small TV in the car. At 10 a.m. this morning, Mr. Qin Chu, the president of GK Corporation, and Miss Qin Zhaozhao, the executive president of GK Entertainment, held a new jewelry product launch at Kaiyue Hotel. Popular stars Liao Mukin and Han Yueao both attended. Let's take a look at the scene. Wei Yunchu's eyes were glued to the screen as he stared at the cold girl sitting beside Qin Chu. Chapter 48-45. At the Grand Hyatt Hotel. After the product launch, Qin Chu looked at his watch. Take them out for dinner. I have to meet a client later. Cadet. After the father and daughter hurriedly finished the product launch, Qin Chu left first. Pudding brought Mu Qin, Han Yueao, and a few newbies that the company wanted to promote. In the limousine, Pudding sat next to Han Yueao while the other celebrities sat on the edge. Thank you for your hard work today. What do you want to eat? My treat? Pudding looked up and asked everyone. The newbies didn't dare to say anything and were all polite. President Qin, it's up to you. Auntie Yao Yao, what about you? Han Yueao was in her 30s, almost 40. She had grown from a newbie to a veteran star. Her appearance fee was as high as 80 million yuan and she had participated in many big foreign productions. However, her love life had always been a mystery. It was said that she had a strange disease and forgot the man she used to like. After so many years of searching and meeting many people, she felt that something was wrong. In the blink of an eye, Han Yueao was in her 30s, but she was still alone. She lived in a billion-yuan mansion and drove a 10 million yuan sports car. However, she still felt that she was missing something. Han Yueao's agent, who had been with her for many years, became her rumored husband. I'm fine. I'm not very hungry. Where's Liao? Han Yueyao glanced at Liao Mukin. I want to eat at President Qin's house. I heard that South Hill Manor is very big. I've never been there before. Hearing Liao Mukin's flippant words, everyone laughed. Han Yueyao also laughed. South Hill Manor is indeed big and has a lot of delicious food. But it's too late to go now. Don't we have an event in the afternoon? Han Yueyao declined on Pudding's behalf. Otherwise, would she really take these people home to have dinner? The answer was no. South Hill Manor was full of important guests. The twins' coming-of-age ceremony was imminent, so she couldn't take irrelevant people home. Do you want to go to Haidaleo? Xiaomo Luo Shi Jinsei, what do you think? Pudding didn't give them a chance to choose and made the decision herself. We're fine with anything. President Qin, you decide. The newbies naturally listened to their boss. Okay. I haven't had hot pot for a long time. Han Yueyao nodded. Boss, if I don't go, can you reimburse me? Liao Mukin tilted his head and looked at Pudding with a smirk. It was as if teasing the boss was a particularly fun thing to do. In the entire GK Entertainment, he was the only one who dared to speak to his boss like this. After all, he didn't need to worry about being fired because he was too valuable. Sure, I'll give you 30 yuan. You can go out and eat, Pudding said casually as she looked down at the information in her hands. 30? Boss, you're so generous. Tell me, what can I buy with 30 yuan? Liao Mukin retorted. Malatang hot and sour noodles, scallion pancakes, instant noodles? And you can add a few more eggs, Pudding retorted. Boss, you're indeed a businessman. You're so smart. But I still want to go to Haidaleo with you. Pudding took her artist to a nearby hot pot restaurant and went straight into a private room. Pudding put down her handbag and went to the washroom to touch up her makeup. Then, suddenly she felt her heart race. It was as if something was going to happen. It had been a day and she felt uneasy for no reason. There were only 2 days left until the coming-of-age ceremony. Would that person come? What would happen after he came? Pudding looked at herself in the mirror, her eyes confused. Chapter 48-46. On the busy road, a low-key luxury car drove by. Do you want to eat Haidaleo? Wei Liao asked his son. When he woke up this morning, his left eyelid kept twitching. At the time, he thought it was funny and wondered if something good was going to happen. After all, when his left eyelid twitched, something good was going to happen. Later, when he got busy at work, he didn't pay much attention to it. It wasn't until his wife took his son to the company that Wei Liao was dumbfounded. Then he couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. No matter what the reason was, Wei Yunqiu didn't come back to China for 5 years. As a parent, they definitely felt uncomfortable. Now that his son came back without warning and even showed up at the company, Wei Liao was naturally very excited. Wei Yunqiu's personality was completely different from Gao Buyuan's. When Gao Buyuan was bored, he would argue with his father or joke around with him. Wei Yunqiu had always been very sensible, super sensible, and had a very close relationship with his father. Therefore, when Wei Yunqiu first went abroad, Wei Liao really wanted to visit him. He even took time out to visit Wei Yunqiu in the States with Jiang Xiaowei 5 times. Basically, they went once every 2 months. It was lunch break, so Wei Liao immediately put down his work and took his wife and son out for lunch. When they passed by Haidaleo, he even asked his son if he wanted to eat. Neither he nor Jiang Xiaowei noticed that a limousine was parked in front of the hot pot restaurant. It was the car of the president of GK Entertainment, Pudding's car. She was here too? Wei Yunqiu's gaze deepened. Was he going to meet her in this way? What would it be like after they met? What would her expression be like? Would she be happy to see him come back? After a few seconds, Wei Yunqiu shook his head. Dad, I don't want to eat hot pot. Okay, then let's go somewhere else. In the end, Wei Liao took his wife and son to a famous Sichuan restaurant to eat the famous pickled fish. Wei Yunqiu looked at the familiar and bustling streets, his heart filled with emotions. Son, why are you back so suddenly? Jiang Xiaowei glared at her husband. You already know the answer. Wei Yunqiu smiled faintly and said nothing. Does Pudding know that you're back? Sure enough, this dad of his was a little nosy. Wei Yunqiu pursed his lips. She doesn't know. Then, when are you leaving? 3 days later, Wei Yunqiu said. Wei Liao and Jiang Xiaowei were both stunned. What's the rush? 3 days later. Isn't that the night of Pudding and Little Bean's coming-of-age ceremony? Yes, I flew to Jingdu at 2 o'clock in the morning, then transferred to Berlin. You're in such a hurry. It's only been 3 days. It's too much. Can't you stay for a few more days? Jiang Xiaowei was reluctant to part with her son. Her eyes were red. Wei Yunqiu reached out his big hands and hugged his mother's shoulders warmly. I also want to stay for a few more days, but there are really a lot of things to do at school. Didn't I tell you? I signed up for a lot of classes this semester and even worked as an assistant for our tutor. I don't want to delay the progress of the whole group because of personal reasons. Wei Yunchu was an extremely independent person. In the 5 years he had been abroad, he had never asked his parents for help because he couldn't solve anything. Never. Even though he was only 18 or 19 years old, which was the same age as Pudding, he looked very mature. Even many mature adults didn't have his wisdom and skills. Have you prepared a present for Pudding's coming-of-age ceremony? Jiang Xiaowei looked at her son with heartache. Jiang Xiaowei had watched Pudding grow up, so she knew the child's personality too well. Therefore, even though she really wanted to help the two kids get married, she couldn't do anything about it, not even Huamian. Chapter 48-47. Wei Yunchu nodded. What gift is it? Jiang Xiaowei asked her son. It's a secret. He chuckled. The family of 3 finally managed to have a meal despite their busy schedule. On the other side it was also very lively. After Lu Yen came, Little Bean didn't go to work and begged her mother to take the day off. In the morning, Huamin drove to Southside for a meeting, but Little Bean stayed in bed until 9 a.m. Then she got up to eat breakfast. At this time she found that Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan had already run 10 kilometers around South Hill Manor. The two sisters were wearing long-sleeved sportswear. One was black and the other was white. Xiao Tuanchuan was more resolute, so she wore black. Xiao Yuanyuan was more introverted, so she wore white. It was very clean. The two faces were exactly the same, but they were different from Pudding and Little Bean. Pudding was on the skinny side while Little Bean was chubbier, so it was easier to recognize them. But Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan were exactly the same in height, figure, and appearance. If it weren't for their different clothes, they wouldn't be able to tell Little Bean apart. I say, when my auntie named you guys, she was too casual. Little Bean suddenly sighed. What do you mean? Xiao Yuanyuan looked at Little Bean with a smile, holding a towel in her hand. My sister and I, although our names are the same, Chow Chow Mu. But we have a source. Do you know the ancient poem, Immortal at the Magpie Bridge? If two people love each other for a long time, why would they be together day and night? At that time my mommy missed my daddy, so she named them Chow Chow Mu. It's so poetic. You two are Tuan Tuan and Yuan Yuan. Little Bean complained more than once. She always thought that her auntie was a smart and thoughtful person. Why did she name her children so casually? My mom said that we should name them casually so that they'll be easy to raise. They can't be too weird or they'll have a bad life, Xiao Tuanchuan said. Xiao Yuanyuan nodded. Although our names aren't that poetic, Tuan 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 and Yuan Yuan is a good name. It means that our family is together. I like it. Okay. As long as you two like it. What else can I say? Little Bean complained like an adult as she drank her yogurt. I heard that your boyfriend is coming back today? Xiao Yuanyuan asked her. Yeah, I'll pick him up later, Little Bean said happily. Xiao Tuanchuan immediately rolled his eyes. You drive? Are you sure? I'll ask my driver to pick me up. Is that okay? It seemed that Little Bean's driving skills were a secret that the whole family knew. It's too troublesome to find a driver. I can go with you. Xiao Yuanyuan smiled. Really? Don't tell me you have something to ask of me? One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. Little Bean understood this principle. What can I ask of you? You're not as rich as Pudding, and you're not as good at martial arts as Tuan Tuan. Xiao Yuanyuan continued to laugh. You make it sound like I'm worthless. No. How can you be worthless? At least you know how to eat, Xiao Yuanyuan. How dare you insult me? Do you think I won't show you how lovey-dovey I am? Little Bean pointed at Xiao Yuanyuan's nose and said confidently. Xiao Tuanchuan, Xiao Yuanyuan, sis, that's all you've got. Even Qin Guogua couldn't stand it anymore and was sweating. Xiao Yuanyuan, you're only 12. Do you have a driver's license? You can drive. Little Bean finally realized that although Xiao Yuanyuan could drive, she didn't have a driver's license. She was only 12 years old. Although she was 165 meters tall, she was still underage. Chapter 48-48. Xiao Yuanyuan smiled slightly. I drive. I don't need a driver's license. Hey, if you guys leave, what will I do at home? Xiao Tuanchuan suddenly realized how bored she would be if the two left. Why don't you continue to fight with my brother? Little Bean suggested. Sister, do you want to die? Qin Guogua covered Little Bean's mouth from behind. Even though he won last night's competition, he was still exhausted. Okay? Xiao Tuanchuan was a scary girl. Qin Guogua didn't want to fight with her. Ah, I have an idea. Tuanchuan, you can play with Tang Tianjiao later. Little Bean began to come up with another idea. Tang Tianjiao? Oh. Xiao Tuanchuan was confused. Brother, call Tianjiao later and ask him to come. I think Tuanchuan will like him. I hope so. Qin Guogua smiled wickedly. At this moment, Tang Tianjiao just got up at home. He had classes today, but he refused to go to school. In the morning, Tang Chuan was so angry because of this that he almost used the family law. In the end, Qi Ning spoke up and let him go. Other children would go out with their parents on the weekend, eat, and go to the amusement park. Tang Tianjiao's family was special. From time to time, a boy or girl would come to fight with him. If he got into more trouble, he would be beaten by his parents. After a beating, he would behave for a while. Among the children, Tang Tianjiao was beaten the most. He was indeed the naughtiest. Even Huomin was confused. To be honest, she had never seen such a naughty child. Tang Tianjiao woke up in the morning and refused to get up. He wanted to go to South Hill Manor and play with his uncle. Then he received a call from Qin Guogua, who invited him over. He said that he had a new friend. The kid picked up the phone and got up quickly. He dressed himself up as a devil and then asked the driver to take him to South Hill Manor. He didn't even wait for his mother. He complained that Qi Ning was too slow. On the other side, Xiao Yuanyuan picked a white Maserati from the garage of South Hill Manor. Then he took Little Bean out of the house. Little Bean was really lazy. She didn't even want to put on makeup to pick up her boyfriend. She changed into a Chanel dress and went out. Fortunately, she had a good foundation and exquisite facial features, so even if she didn't dress up, she still looked beautiful. Where's Yuanyuan? Xiao Fei came back from his morning run with Lu Yen and was surprised to see his daughter missing. They went out with Little Bean. He went out with Little Bean? Lu Yen was surprised. Yeah, Little Bean's driving skills are terrible, so Yuan drove to pick up Little Bean's boyfriend. Yuan is driving? Lu Yen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Can Little Bean handle Yuan's driving? Xiao Fei was worried about Little Bean. Hearing this, Qin Guogua could not help but ask, Auntie, is Sister Yuan bad at driving? No, she drove very well. Lu Yen smiled, but her smile was complicated. Qin Guogua vaguely felt that his second sister was going to be in trouble. As expected, 10 minutes later, after getting off the mountain road and onto the highway, Xiao Yuan drove the car until it flew. Little Bean's stomach churned as if she was on a roller coaster. Sister Little Bean, do you think I'm driving too slowly? The engine was so loud that Xiao Yuan had to shout. Little Bean covered her mouth to stop herself from vomiting. She yelled, You didn't drive too slowly. You flew too fucking low, Xiao Yuan. Chapter 48-49. At Haidaleo Restaurant. Pudding was absent-minded during the meal. She checked her cell phone frequently, worried that something might happen at home. Pudding, are you in a hurry? If you're in a hurry, you can leave first. I'll pay the bill, Han Yueao comforted her. I'll pay the bill. It's okay, Annie Han. Boss, your coming-of-age ceremony is coming soon. Can you date after you turn 18? Liao Mukin leaned back in his chair with a smirk on his face. Pudding's face turned cold immediately. I mean, you're finally over 18. Will the chairman allow you to date? Liao Mukin realized his question was inappropriate and immediately corrected himself. It's none of your business. Pudding didn't want to answer such a boring question. If this guy didn't look like Handsome Sue, she swore she would have thrown him into the hot pot. After the meal, Pudding took out her wallet and handed it to a newcomer named Xia Mo. I'm going to the washroom. Please pay the bill for me. Thank you. Okay, President Qin. The girl took Pudding's wallet and walked toward the bar. Pudding went into the washroom to reapply her lipstick. She was surprised to see an acquaintance here. The girl was surprised to see her as well. Pudding, long time no see. Her voice was sweet and so was her face. Over the years, she had undergone many successful plastic surgeries, but she wasn't the same as she used to be. Pudding stared at her face and didn't speak. The girl smiled. I'm sorry. I shouldn't call you by your nickname in such a formal setting. Should I call you Miss Qin or President Qin? Tian, long time no see, Pudding said. Of course not. With my status, how can I offend a rich young lady like you? Tian mocked with a smile. Are you curious? I'm back in the country. Is Yunshu back? She looked at Pudding with a smile. Pudding still didn't speak. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. Yunshu is very busy. He doesn't have time to come back. After all, nothing is more important than his studies. Tian Tian smiled brightly. What are you trying to say? Pudding looked at Tian's face and felt nauseous. Pudding had a good memory. She still remembered when Tian Tian was little, Auntie Hoi Yen took her to South Hill Manor to play. At that time, the relationship between the adults and Hoi Yen's life and Tian's were not bad. After so many things had happened, Tian was no longer the same as before. At least, the innocence and childish, the chilly innocence in her eyes, was replaced. Tian she used her mother's death to make Shin Mingxi and Wei Ying bear the guilt in their hearts. Tian, and treated Hoi Shi even wanted to be with Wei Yunchu. Pudding had seen this many times 5 years ago. 5 years ago, Tian had been studying in the capital. However, it was said that she had developed a psychological disorder and did not feel safe, so she came back. Han Hua and Han's Hua house. Naturally, she had more opportunities to interact with Wei Yunchu. Then she kept creating conflicts between the two of them. Hua Pudding and Wei Yunchu broke up completely. They blacklisted each other and didn't contact each other for 5 years. Pudding hadn't seen Tian for 5 years. Seeing her now, she felt suffocated for no reason. Pudding, that Liam Yukin is good. He's perfect for you? Don't think about my Yunchu again. You too, our history. Tian stared at Pudding's face and said word by word. Chapter 48:50. Then Pudding suddenly laughed. Her laughter was unfathomable. What are you laughing at? Tian's eyes gradually turned cold. She had lost all her patience with Pudding. I'm just laughing at you. After so many years, you're still as stupid as ever. You're telling me this, which proves how insecure you are. 5 years have passed. Didn't you go abroad with him? Why don't you even have the most basic sense of security now? Also, you're warning me. Who do you think you are? Even if I don't go to Wei Yunchu, he still won't like you. You don't seem to realize this fact. Tian sneered. You're mistaken. My meaning is clear. Yunchu doesn't have to be with me. He can be with anyone. As long as that person isn't you, I'm fine with it. Really? If you put it that way, then I really want to make things difficult for you. Take a guess. If I take the initiative to call him and invite him back to my coming-of-age ceremony, then, will we go back to how we were before? Will he not come back to America and leave you alone abroad? Hearing Pudding's words, Tian's expression changed drastically. She was also frightened. Qin Zhao, don't be so cheap. Hearing that Pudding was going to call Wei Yunchu, Tian was completely flustered. All these years, the two of them had been in a cold war. If Pudding really couldn't resist calling him first, then Wei Yunchu wouldn't be able to resist. Then Wei Yunchu must have been unable to resist the temptation. After all, everyone knew how well he used to treat Pudding. That was why Tian used the word cheap to insult Pudding. Pudding wasn't angry. She had always been calm. After hearing Tian's words, she only smiled. Then she looked at the mirror in the bathroom and adjusted her makeup. You're wrong. I've always been expensive. Then Pudding walked away in her high heels, leaving a pale Tian behind. After Pudding left, she was a little flustered. Then she took out her phone and sent Wei Yunchu a WeChat message. Yunchu, what are you doing? After a while, there was no reply. Gritting her teeth, Tian sent another message. Yunchu, I miss you. When I get back, I'll treat you to steak. She still didn't get a reply. Wei Yunchu received a WeChat message, but when he saw that it was from her, he just glanced at it indifferently and didn't reply. In an elegant private room of a Sichuan restaurant with Wei Liao and Jiang Xiaowei, Wei Yunchu didn't have a good appetite, so he only drank some water. A black custom-made phone was placed beside his hand. 5 minutes ago, Gao Buyuan updated his WeChat moments. Pudding and Wei Yunchu had blocked each other, but Pudding still had Pudding's WeChat. Later, Little Bean blacklisted Wei Yunchu as well. He only had Qin Guegua, Gao Buyuan and Tang Tianjiao's contact information. Therefore, whenever Gao Buyuan posted something, he would be the first to see it. Wei Yunchu was also the closest to Gao Buyuan. 5 minutes ago, Gao Buyuan posted a short video. In the video, Little Bean was running toward him. Gao Buyuan added, "We've been online dating for 3 years and we finally meet today. Wow, why is she fatter than in the photos?" As soon as he finished speaking, he was punched by Little Bean. He was such a clown. It looked like they were slandering Little Bean, but in fact they were showing off their love. As Gao Buyuan and Little Bean's WeChat friends, he had to get used to the fact that they could show off their love at any time. Wei Yunchu suddenly envied them. If it weren't for that incident 5 years ago, he and Pudding would be very close today. Chapter 48:51. In the VIP passageway of the airport, Little Bean pounced on him and kissed him crazily. From afar, she looked like a happy husky, attracting the attention of passers-by. Gao Buyuan didn't bring anything with him because he was on leave. He only had a black Burberry bag in his hand. He had also changed out of his police uniform into a casual outfit. Gao Buyuan wasn't as hot-tempered as his mother, nor was he as gossipy as his father. Especially when he smiled, he felt that the whole world was beautiful. Gao Buyuan was the least good-looking among this group of children. In fact, he wasn't bad, but he couldn't compare to Pudding, Little Bean, and Wei Yunchu. Gao Buyuan's eyes weren't big and his facial features weren't that exquisite, but he was still good-looking. Little Bean had always thought that he was a warm man. He had done all kinds of embarrassing things for Little Bean over the years. Even when he was often pranked, he wasn't angry. Even the cold and arrogant Pudding envied her sister because in all these years, she had never seen Little Bean and Gao Buyuan quarrel. It was always Little Bean who was angry, and Gao Buyuan would coax her unconditionally and tirelessly. The elders felt sorry for Buyuan. Even Huamin and Qin Chu often warned Little Bean not to bully Buyuan. But was Buyuan really that easy to bully? No. Gao Buyuan studied at the Public Security University, and his major was one of the best. He was agile and quick-witted. Before he graduated, he helped his professor solve a murder case and performed well. Such a person was only afraid of Little Bean because he liked her and didn't want her to be sad. Looking at Little Bean and Gao Buyuan being so intimate, Qiao Yuanyuan shook her head and sighed. Why do I feel like I shouldn't have come today? Let Qiao Tuanchuan come. Yuanyuan, come here. Let me introduce you. Little Bean was done acting coquettishly and then remembered that she had a cousin. She pulled Qiao Yuanyuan over and was about to introduce her, but Qiao Yuanyuan smiled and said, no need to introduce him. Gao Buyuan is your boyfriend, the son of Auntie Zhu Lingling and Uncle Gao Ran. He's a freshman at the Public Security University. He performed well and won a second-class Team Merit Award. He also helped his professor solve a shocking murder case. I heard that he's been recommended to graduate students. What? You investigated him? Little Bean exclaimed. My sister did. Don't you know her? She loves to investigate the background of others the most. All these people have been turned upside down by her. I'm just borrowing her glory. Tuan Tuan is really something. Little Bean mumbled. Hello. Gao Buyuan smiled and greeted Qiao Yuanyuan. So what now? Should I call him Brother Buyuan or brother-in-law? Qiao Yuanyuan pretended to be an adult and asked. What brother-in-law? Did he pay you to change your name? Little Bean glared at Qiao Yuanyuan. Gao Buyuan quickly took out a red packet from his bag and stuffed it into Qiao Yuanyuan's hand. Brother-in-law? Qiao Yuanyuan took the money and changed her words. Little Bean didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She glanced at the young man beside her and said, Look at how smart you are. You always carry red packets around with you. Ah, you're good. You have a bright future. Thank you for your compliment, Dr. Qin. Gao Buyuan smiled warmly. Every time he returned home to this familiar city and saw his beloved Little Bean, Gao Buyuan would be filled with happiness. He still remembered when he left the city to go to school in Jing City as a freshman. Little Bean's eyes were swollen from crying. Gao Buyuan's heart ached for her. When she arrived at school, her throat became inflamed. It took 3 days of infusion for her to recover. Later, he came home almost every week to help Little Bean recover. Gao Buyuan was the representative of his generation who doted on his wife. Who wouldn't agree with him? After they got into the Maserati, Little Bean and Gao Buyuan sat in the back seat and began to lovey-dovey. I don't think I need to eat lunch. I'm so full from this PDA, Qiao Yuanyuan complained in the driver's seat. Chapter 48-52. While Qiao Yuanyuan was joking with them, 7 or 8 police officers blocked the road ahead as if they were investigating something. What the? No way. Traffic police. Qiao Yuanyuan blurted out. It's okay. We're not drunk drivers. Gao Buyuan looked at Qiao Yuanyuan and knew she wasn't drunk. Little Bean interrupted. But she's driving without a license. She's only 12 years old. Gao Buyuan, sit tight. I'll step on the gas. Qiao Yuanyuan seemed to want to compete with the police officers. No. I'll take care of it. Gao Buyuan didn't want his little cousin to take the risk. At this moment, the police officer waved his hand to stop the car. Qiao Yuanyuan hesitated for a moment before she obediently pulled over. After all, before she came back to China, her dad repeatedly warned her not to cause trouble for Huamin's aunt. License, a police officer said in a routine tone as he waved his hand at Qiao Yuanyuan. who was sitting in the driver's seat. At this moment, the backseat window opened and Gao Buyuan stuck his head out. "You don't have to call my dad, right?" Gao Ran had been a director for a long time, and his son had appeared in the bureau many times. Almost everyone knew who he was. Seeing that he was the son of a big shot, they immediately let him in. No, take care." Gao Buyuan nodded and smiled as he closed the window. Little Bean looked at Gao Buyuan with admiration and kissed him on the cheek. "Damn. Can you guys control yourselves? There's a living person in front of us." Qiao Yuan almost closed her eyes. "We can't control ourselves. If you're not used to it, you can get out of the car and cool off." Qiao Yuan, Gao Buyuan's return made the atmosphere livelier. In Huamin's South Hill Manor, there were banquets held in the front greenhouse for several days. Of course, they only hosted their family and friends. To everyone's surprise, when Little Bean, Gao Buyuan, and Qiao Yuan came back, Tang Tianjiao's face was bruised and his arm was dislocated. "How did you do that?" Gao Buyuan laughed. Obviously he was gloating. Qing Guogua leaned against the door frame with a cold expression. "She fought with Tuan. Haha." Little Bean let out a tragic laugh. Qiao Yuan, on the other hand, was calm as if she had expected this. She even patted Tang Tianjiao's shoulder and comforted him. "You're really lucky. My sister didn't even hit you hard. The last time you competed with my sister, there was a kid your age from our military academy who was beaten up by my sister until all his bones were broken. He was bedridden for 3 months. Hearing Qiao Yuan's words, Tang Tianjiao shuddered. How scary was this? Originally he was full of confidence. After all, he was a taekwondo master and had learned professional Muay Thai from his father. That's right. Last year, Tang Chuan brought his wife and children to Thailand for business and stayed there for more than a month. In order to train his son's physical fitness, Tang Chuan invited a famous Muay Thai master to teach him personally. Logically speaking, even though this kid was only 12 years old, he was very agile. It wouldn't be a problem for him to deal with 5 or 6 adults. But even so, Tang Tianjiao was still completely oppressed by Qiao Tuanchuan, who was of the same age. But I heard, Brother Yao won yesterday. I thought I could do it too. Tang Tianjiao looked aggrieved. He had never seen Qing Guogua's skills, so he underestimated Qiao Tuanchuan's ability. I won by a narrow margin yesterday. You were completely crushed today, Qing Guogua said calmly. Why do I feel like you guys set this up to trick me? The more Tang Tianjiao thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. You're making excuses after losing. Useless. Little Bean laughed and scolded, trying to hide her intention to trick Tang Tianjiao. Everyone's smiles were also very profound and mysterious. By the way, Brother Boy, have you contacted Yunchu? Is he not coming back? Qing Guogua thought of something and asked Buyuan. Chapter 48-53. When Qing Guogua asked this question, everyone's gaze focused on Gao Buyuan. He actually wanted to give everyone a surprise, but I asked him the other day. He said that he still has a project to do, so he won't be coming back. After Gao Buyuan said that, he felt a little awkward and lowered his head. Forget it. If he doesn't come back, so be it. Our pudding doesn't care. Although Little Bean always bickered with her sister, she was still unhappy to hear that her sister was wronged. Therefore, she naturally spoke up for her sister. GK headquarters. After Pudding finished her work, she remembered that someone else had arrived today. Just as she was thinking, her chauffeur called. President Qin, I've sent him to the company. Do you want me to go straight to your office? Yes, bring him here. Okay, I'll be upstairs in 5 minutes. After hanging up the phone, Pudding was still a little nervous. She stood up and took a few deep breaths. All these years, as long as it was someone related to him, she would carefully interact with them. Although they had already forgotten and couldn't remember, but she had all the memories. 5 minutes later, the office door opened. Pudding looked at the familiar figure and almost cried. Uncle and Pudding said, Pudding, I'm not late, am I? And smiled honestly. After Master Wu erased everyone's memories and also lost all his memories. He no longer had any obsession with Suyu, so he naturally wouldn't stay in Suyu's private mansion anymore. At first, Pudding introduced him to her father to be the company's security manager. Later on, and couldn't get used to the life in the big city, so he returned to his hometown. Anne's hometown was in a remote mountain area. When he returned to the area, he used his savings to build a 2-story house. He even married a girl from a neighboring village and had a son and a daughter. He contracted a fish pond in his hometown and raised some rare fish. His income had been quite good these few years. And didn't even remember how he met Pudding. He vaguely remembered that he used to work for a big boss. He had protected the big boss for many years. Later on, the big boss moved away or something else happened. His memory of that was blurry. However, the money in his bank card was real. He also vaguely remembered that he had known Pudding and her family for many years. After and returned to the mountains, he rarely came to see City. This time, it was Pudding who called him in advance and invited him to the coming-of-age ceremony. He was really flattered. Why didn't Auntie come? Pudding asked with a smile. She still has to take care of the 2 kids at home. Uncle Shawan, I'll bring you home later. You can stay at my house for the next few years. Don't feel uncomfortable. Everyone misses you. Yes. Shawan nodded. Although he came back mainly to attend Pudding and Little Bean's coming-of-age ceremony, and had a vague feeling that there was someone more important. But he just couldn't remember. That feeling was very strange. Uncle, how much do you remember about the past? To be honest, maybe it's because my head was injured when I was in the army, so my memory has been deteriorating for the past few years. I don't really remember much about the past. It's very vague. Do you still remember Lou? Pudding stopped halfway through her sentence. Forget it. When you see her, you'll probably remember her. Pudding smiled. Because of the loss of his memory, and couldn't even remember Lu Yen. How would he react when he saw her again? Pudding knew it was inappropriate for her to gather so many people, but in fact she just wanted to use this method to miss Suyu, the man who was very, very important to her life. Chapter 48-54. Inside a small pavilion on top of South Hill Manor, Rick and Chin-Chu sat side by side, overlooking the scenery of the city. The 2 men's hearts calmed down. You didn't expect me to live such an ordinary life, right? Rick asked Chin-Chu. Yeah, I thought you'd become the next godfather of the underworld. That's not important to me. If it weren't for my brother, I wouldn't have. I might still be here running the seductive Fox bar that belongs to me. To me, being a bar owner is enough. Life's trajectory isn't something we can control. Many times, no matter how hard you try, things won't go the way you want. We call it fate, Chin-Chu said. What? You're old now, so you're playing chicken soup for the soul? Rick teased him. Chin-Chu smiled faintly. He was still as handsome as ever. Chu, yeah? You and Huamin had a wedding? Chin-Chu's eyes flashed and he fell slightly silent. You love her so much, you don't seem like someone who doesn't care about giving her a title. Although a wedding is just a formality, it's also a symbol of a lifetime commitment. You 2 have 3 children now and they're all grown up. You're both over 40 years old, are you really not going to have a wedding? That's not what I want, it's what Mian wants. Then why did Huamin do it? She knows how much you love her, and how much you want to announce your happiness to the world. Rick didn't understand. He didn't know why Huamin was doing this. Because they had all lost their memories of Suyu, Rick couldn't remember why Huamin was so persistent. She didn't say and I didn't ask. I don't want to make things difficult for her. You know, I've never had the heart to make things difficult for her, Chin-Chu said slowly. Do you want me to ask for you? No, it's fine like this. Besides the wedding, we already have everything. As you said, our children are all grown up. The whole world knows that Huamin is Chin-Chu's wife, so it really doesn't matter. Really? If it's true, you wouldn't be so disappointed? As Chin-Chu's best friend, Rick had always known the only regret in Chin-Chu's heart. After their wedding had been ruined by Huasiqian, Chin-Chu had always wanted to prepare for a grand wedding. He wanted to give his wife a beautiful memory, even the most beautiful memory of her life. However, Huamin no longer mentioned the wedding. Chin-Chu occasionally mentioned it, but Huamin subconsciously avoided the topic. Chin-Chu couldn't bring it up again. In the blink of an eye, the twins were already 18 years old. Huamin and Chin-Chu were both middle-aged. Rick thought that they shouldn't be like this. South Hill Manor, after arriving at the hospital, Huamin had a simple meeting, dealt with some work and came home early. Gao Ran and his family had arrived early. Zhu Lingling helped Huamin wash the fruits for lunch. She didn't forget to complain, Mian, I'm telling you, my heartless son came straight to your house after leaving the airport. I know. Little Bean and Yuan Yuan went to pick up Buyuan. Huamin was calm. So is our Buyuan a typical example of forgetting his mother after marrying a wife? No. He hasn't even married yet and he's already forgotten his mother. All set. It's okay. He'll be filial to his father-in-law and mother-in-law in the future. Get out of my way. My son was taken away by your family for no reason. Zhu Lingling pinched Huamin's neck. She was as energetic as when she was young. Where's Xiaowei? Why are you so late today? Huamin glanced around but didn't see Jiang Xiaowei. Chapter 48-55. Zhu Lingling suddenly remembered. Oh, by the way, she just called me and said that she and her husband had something to do and would come over later. Okay. I'll save a portion for her. All these years, Huamin's friendship with Zhu Lingling and Jiang Xiaowei remained unchanged. The three of them had never had any unhappiness, even though Pudding and Wei Yunchu had blocked each other. Huamin and Jiang Xiaowei were still as close as ever. Whenever she had something delicious or good, she would think of them. Huamin carefully peeled the fruits and placed them on a fruit plate. He even saved a portion for Jiang Xiaowei and put it in the fridge, wrapped in plastic wrap. When Pudding drove in within, he saw Tang Tianjiao sticking to Qiao Tuanchuan like a dog skin plaster. He wanted to follow Qiao Tuanchuan wherever he went. I said, "Are you a dog skin plaster? Don't follow me. If you agree to take me as your disciple, I won't follow you." It turned out that Tang Tianjiao had been beaten up and was shamelessly pestering Qiao Tuanchuan to be his disciple. Qiao Tuanchuan was so annoyed that he was going crazy. "If I don't take in disciples, I'm afraid I won't teach my skills to others. Then I'll follow you." Tang Tianjiao was so shameless that no one could mess with him. "If you follow me, I'll beat you up." Qiao Tuanchuan waved his fists as if he was going to use force. "If you beat me up, I'll tell my aunt," Tang Tianjiao said confidently. Qiao Tuanchuan, who was Tang Tianjiao's aunt? Of course it was Huamin. Huamin was Qiao Tuanchuan's beloved aunt. Therefore he didn't want his aunt to show up. Qiao Tuanchuan felt that he had been tricked by Little Bean. The moment he arrived, he provoked a dog skin plaster and sat in Pudding's car. When they came in, the car was very slow, and vaguely saw a familiar face. He saw Qiao Tuanchuan, who was arguing with Tang Tianjiao at the door. Qiao Tuanchuan looked a bit like Lu Yen, but he also looked like Xiao Fei. "That little girl looks familiar," and mumbled. Pudding just drove calmly and didn't answer. After parking the car and got out of the car. At this time, Qin Chu and Rick also came back from the top of the mountain. "Dad, look who's here." Pudding smiled at Qin Chu. "President Qin, long time no see." Shaoan respected Qin Chu very much, so when he saw Qin Chu, he greeted him very politely. Shaoan Qin Chu was also very close. He walked over and chatted with Shaoan for a while, asking him about his situation in his hometown in the past few years. Shaoan returned to the fields. Among these people he lived a relatively poor life, but he was the most relaxed. They were the most ordinary people. "Where's Auntie?" Pudding asked Xiao Yuan. "My mom is taking an afternoon nap at the swimming pool in the back garden," Xiao Yuan said. "Swimming pool? Afternoon nap. Auntie sure has a personality." Pudding smiled and let in all the way in, and also greeted everyone. Looking at the familiar faces, many of Xiaoan's blurry memories came back. Especially when he saw the two elders of the Su family, he had an inexplicable feeling in his heart. He shouldn't be familiar with them, but why was he so touched? Until he saw Lu Yen in the back garden. Lu Yen was only wearing a white V-neck long-sleeved shirt and a pair of tight dark blue jeans. She looked like a young girl. She was holding a book in her hand. It was a book about Zhou. The book covered her face. She was probably taking a nap. "Auntie," Pudding called out. Lu Yen sat up lazily, removed the book from her face and yawned, and looked at the familiar face and his body trembled. "Lu Yen," he blurted out. All his memories of Lu Yen were instantly awakened. Pudding looked at him sideways and saw that he was very excited. Chapter 48-56. Hearing Anne's voice, Lu Yen turned her head and looked over. Then her memory opened. Except for the part where she couldn't remember Su Yu, Lu Yen recalled all the memories about Anne. She was his goddess, an unattainable woman. He didn't even dare to think about it. Anne's calm eyes finally collapsed when he saw Lu Yen. Instead, it was replaced by the ecstasy and passion of a young man meeting his sweetheart for the first time. "Hey, you're here too. Long time no see. How are you?" Lu Yen stood up swiftly from the bench and tossed the book onto the bench with a smile on her face, and nodded excitedly. Good. I'm good. How about you, goddess?" "Me? I'm still the same." Then they smiled at each other and Pudding found an excuse to leave. She wanted to give Uncle An a chance to talk to Auntie Lu Yen alone. Although Xiao Fei was jealous, he wouldn't be jealous of An. After all, he knew that their statuses and thoughts were very different. In the back garden, Lu Yen naughtily climbed onto a high railing despite her age. Sitting on it, she swung her feet and crossed her legs, and stood below, still looking up at Lu Yen. He had never felt so peaceful before. It was as if it was only yesterday that he had accompanied Lu Yen to eat and stir up trouble in this city. Time is really a butcher's knife. Lu Yen glanced at him and saw that his sideburns had turned white. She sighed that time was unforgiving. Such poetic words didn't sound like something the crazy Lu Yen would say. Sure enough, she continued, but whether time is a butcher's knife depends on whether you're a pig or not. And, do you think I've changed? All these years? Lu Yen asked, and you're still the same as before. After a pause and said another word, beautiful. She was still as beautiful as before. It wasn't a compliment, it was what An thought. Lu Yan's beauty was unparalleled in the world. Even Xiao Tuanchuan and Xiao Yuanyuan were stunning at such a young age. Lu Yan smiled in satisfaction and nodded. Yeah, I like that. I was just thinking that if you said I was old and ugly, I would beat you into a pig's head. And smiled foolishly. Have you been training all these years? How's your martial arts? Do you want to spar with me? No. I'll just admit defeat. Goddess, please don't torture me. Xiaoan was very sensible. Hearing that Lu Yen was going to fight, he surrendered immediately. He was not as arrogant as the young master of the Tang family. He had known Lu Yan's strength for a long time. Although many years had passed, he still did not dare to underestimate Lu Yen. So, before Lu Yen could play a prank on him, he refused. Xiaoan, there's something I don't understand. Since I ran into you today, I'd like to ask you. Please speak, goddess. Through the sunlight, and looked at Lu Yen, who was high up in the air, and felt satisfied that he could see her again in this lifetime. Who was your employer back then? I vaguely remember that you used to be a bodyguard for an employer. But after all these years, I can't remember his name or what he looked like. I think I know him, but I just can't remember anything. Whenever I try to remember, my mind goes blank. This feeling is so fucking strange. Lu Yan's brain was actually very sensitive. After seeing him this time, she immediately thought of many unexplainable things, so she asked him directly. And was also stunned. Chapter 48:57. Because Lu Yan's feelings were so similar to his. He had been living and working in his hometown all these years and still had so much money in his card, but what did he do in this city? Who he was a bodyguard for, his relationship with his employer, and all his memories were gone. It was like a roll of film tape. There was a beginning and an end, and everyone knew what the ending was, but the process in the middle was suddenly blurred. That feeling was getting weirder and weirder. Goddess, to be honest, I feel the same as you. I can't remember either. How can that be? Lu Yen was shocked. That's your employer. You've been by that person's side for so many years. So many years you can't forget everything. Think carefully, is that person a man or a woman, round or flat? Lu Yan's curiosity was completely aroused, so she wanted to get to the bottom of it, hoping to get something from En. However, En really couldn't remember. He told Lu Yen everything in his heart. Only then did Lu Yen realize that she and En had a common memory that had been magically erased. If she hadn't seen En, Lu Yen wouldn't have cared about this. Because in her heart, her father, Qiao Fei, her two daughters, and Huo Min's family were the most important people. Now that she saw En, Lu Yan's curiosity grew. She really wanted to know what the memory she had forgotten was. Who was the person she had forgotten? After putting sent in to meet her auntie, she went to see the children. These super-rich second-generation heirs were especially close to each other. Little Bean, Buyuan, Qingguogua, young Master Tang, Xiao Tuanchuan, Xiao Yuanyuan, and Rick's son Jin were all there. Except for Zhixin's youngest daughter, Wei Ying's youngest daughter, and Ni Yang's children who hadn't gone abroad, everyone else was there. It's been a long time since I've seen so many people. Gao Buyuan smiled and sighed. If only Yunqiu was here. Young Master Tang didn't know how to read people's expressions and touched a sore spot. As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Pudding, afraid that she would be unhappy. But who was Pudding? That was very much like his parents' personalities, and it was not for show. Those who didn't know her well would never be able to see any emotions on her face. Only Little Bee knew that she still cared. Pudding didn't seem to hear Tang Tianjiao's words. She looked around and said, since there are so many people here, why don't we play a killing game? Please close your eyes when it's dark. I like that. Xiao Tuanchuan also liked to play brain-burning games. Everyone agreed to Pudding's suggestion. They all seemed to be very interested. Just like that, South Hill Manor had another particularly lively day. The children were playing games and the adults were chatting about their daily lives. Huo Min hadn't had such peaceful days in years. Sometimes she wondered if time had passed so quickly that she had forgotten something important. At this moment, in another space-time of a parallel world. Imperial Star Entertainment headquarters. Su Yu's face was dark as he listened to the summary of the various departments after the failed bid. Everyone knew that the president was in a bad mood, so they didn't dare to speak loudly. Everyone was trembling in fear. At this moment, an ear-piercing ringtone broke the silence. Su Yu's cell phone rang loudly on the table. He looked down at the caller ID and his eyes immediately became gentle. In the next second, Su Yu picked up the phone and said in an extremely gentle voice, "Momo, what's wrong?" "Daddy, I want to eat cake." The volume from Su Yu's phone wasn't low, so everyone in the quiet conference room heard it clearly. The whole world knew that the two women Su Yu cared about the most were his wife, Huamin, and his daughter, Su Yimo. Chapter 48:58. Then Daddy will go back and buy it for you later, okay? Su Yu held the phone and didn't dare to speak too loudly, afraid that he would scare his daughter. "No, Daddy will come back now, not later." "Okay, I'll come back now." "Don't eat matcha, it's hard to communicate." Su Yimo's pronunciation wasn't very accurate and her voice was cute. Su Yu felt that his heart was about to melt when he heard his daughter's voice through the phone. Okay. I won't eat matcha. See you later, Daddy." "See you later, Momo." After hanging up the phone, Su Yu's expression wasn't as gloomy as before. He stood up and looked around at the higher-ups. "That's all for today. Meeting adjourned." Then Su Yu turned around and left. All the higher-ups also stood up and left the venue. This wasn't the first time and everyone was used to it. No matter how important President Su's matter was, it wasn't as important as his wife and child. Huamin and Su Yimo's matter was the most important matter. Su Yu left the company and drove his Lamborghini Sixth Element to the most luxurious cake shop in the city. Other than matcha, he bought a set of all the other flavors for his daughter. Then he drove back to his private villa at lightning speed. This villa was exactly the same as the one he had in another time and space. Su Yu was a very nostalgic person. He would always inadvertently think of another time and space, as if it was something that happened in his previous life. When he reached home, Huamin was surprised to see Su Yu. "Why are you back? What time is it?" Huamin looked at his watch. It was 9:30 in the morning. Su Yu had breakfast at 7:30 and left home. It had only been 2 hours and he was back. What was going on? Momo said that she wanted to eat cake, Su Yu said seriously. Huamin was even more confused. But Momo just fell asleep. She just acted before she fell asleep. How can you take a child's words seriously? Huamin felt that Su Yu was spoiling his daughter too much. They wished they could go up to the 9th heaven to catch the moon and go down to the 5 seas to catch turtles. But I can't break my promise to my daughter. I've already promised her. As he spoke, Su Yu began to toss the cakes he had bought onto the dining table one by one. "When Momo wakes up, give it to her. You'll get cavities if you eat too much sweet food." As a doctor, Huamin really didn't want Su Yu to be so ignorant. "What's wrong with tooth decay? I'll take her to America and get a new set of top-notch teeth." "What kind of father are you? You're so childish." Huamin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Is Daddy back?" Su Yimo was originally asleep, but after hearing Su Yu's voice, she miraculously woke up. He even ran out barefoot. When Su Yu saw this little thing, he was immediately overjoyed. He hurriedly strode over and picked up his daughter from the ground. "Did Daddy ever tell you not to walk barefoot on the ground?" "Yes, I did." "Do you know why?" "It's cold on the ground." Her slurred pronunciation made Su Yu and Huamin want to laugh. "You know it's cold on the ground, but you still did it. Did you do it on purpose?" Su Yu was so bad that he copied his daughter's slurred speech. Luckily, Su Yimo was still young and didn't know the situation. Otherwise, she wouldn't have let her father off so easily. Momo misses Daddy. Seeing that she was being scolded, Su Yimo immediately used her ultimate move and rubbed her head against Su Yu's face. For a moment, Su Yu didn't know what was going on. He wasn't afraid of anything, but he was afraid that his daughter would use her ultimate move. Su Yu was really at her mercy. "Daddy, where's my cake?" The little girl was still thinking about eating. Chapter 48:59. Su Yu carried Su Yimo to the dining table and looked at the dozens of cakes on it. Fortunately, Su Yu's table was big enough to fit all of them. "Wow. Daddy, you're amazing. I'll reward you with a little flower." Su Yimo took off a little red flower on her head and put it on Su Yu's head. "Let's see." Huamin almost spat it out. Su Yu didn't care. As long as his daughter was happy, his image didn't matter. Huamin even naughtily took out his phone and recorded a 10-second video for his parents. Then he posted it on his WeChat moments. Mr. Su skipped work for 2 hours and went home, saying that he was eating cake with his daughter. I can't live like this. I think my family is going bankrupt, Zhu Lingling's cheeky reply. If your family is bankrupt, you can come to my house. I'll give you whatever my golden retriever eats. Huamin directly replied with a hammer, wanting to hammer Zhu Lingling to death. Jiang Xiaowei, on the other hand, was more tactful. She commented, a family flaunting their love. How shameful. Huamin actually didn't want Su Yu to spoil Su Yimo too much, but that was obviously impossible. Because after Huamin gave birth to Su Yimo, she stayed in the confinement center for 28 days. Su Yu stayed there for 28 days. Most of the time he didn't even need a nurse. Changing diapers, feeding milk, and even bathing and swimming for the child were all done by him. Although he was clumsy and didn't know how to do it, he learned very seriously with the professional nurse next to him. At that time, Wei Liao and Tang Chuan lamented that it was over. Lord Su's reputation was ruined. From then on, the king had become a super dad. Su Yu and Huamin eventually named their child Su Yimo. The meaning was, to help each other in times of need. She hoped that Huamin and Su Yu would be able to walk on together no matter how rich or poor they were. Reality proved that when she was with Su Yu, there were no storms at all. After all, Su Yu was a henpecked husband. As long as his wife said one, he would not dare to say two. If his wife asked him to go east, he would not dare to go west. Furthermore, he was proud of being afraid of his wife, which made Tang Chuan and Wei Liao despise him for a long time. After knowing that Wei Liao had married Jiang Xiaowei, he had also become a henpecked family member. Tang Chuan felt that the world had gone completely crazy. In the end, Su Yu accompanied his daughter to eat the cake and had lunch at home before reluctantly returning to the company. Although Huamin was still the deputy director of South Side, he spent most of his time at home taking care of his daughter. After all, she was not at ease with the nanny at home taking care of the children. Therefore, the couple placed all their focus on the little princess, causing Su Yimo to act even more coquettishly. In a parallel world in another space-time continuum. Some people didn't know that Su Yu was so happy now and were still thinking about the past. While others were happily playing the killing game, Little Bean quietly pulled her sister to a corner. Sis, what do you want? Little Bean's face was cold. I didn't do anything. Nothing. Why would you ask Uncle An to come back? You know he's Su. Little Bean didn't finish her sentence. The name Su Yu was like a curse that she hadn't said for a long time. I'm just nostalgic, Little Bean said indifferently. You're not reminiscing about the past. You're trying to remind everyone of him, aren't you? Sis, you're crazy. 5 years ago, you forced Wei Yunchu to leave because of this, and now you're trying to do the same thing again. Do you want mommy to remember everything and feel guilty for the rest of her life? Just because you can't forget, you want everyone to remember. Sis, you're too selfish. Chapter 4860. In the face of Little Bean's questioning and accusation, Pudding didn't retort and remained silent. Fifth Grandpa said that Handsome Su asked him to do it. It was Handsome Su's last wish. He did so much for everyone. He didn't want anyone to suffer. How could you go against his last wish? Look at what you've done. You're so close to Andy Yao. You avoided Wei Yunchu 5 years ago. You made him think that there was someone in your heart that you couldn't get rid of, but you didn't explain it to him. You made him so heartbroken that he left the country. Now you brought Uncle An back. You want everything about Handsome Su back, right? Let me ask you, can you bring him back? Little Bean was rarely so fierce, but she felt that if she didn't say something, her sister would go crazy. I can't. Pudding answered coldly to the question about Su Yu's resurrection. If you can't, why are you still doing this? The biggest event of this coming-of-age ceremony is our secret wedding for Mom and Dad. But you want everyone to remember Handsome Su. Sis, you're crazy? I think you're possessed. Handsome Su has been gone for so many years, but you've gone crazy for so many years. Little Bean wasn't wrong. Everyone had lost their memories except for the twins' memories of Su Yu. In the beginning, the twins couldn't get used to it and often cried in the dead of night, missing Su Yu. As time passed and she grew up with them, she began to understand Su Yu's original intention. After so many years, Little Bean had seen through everything, but Pudding was stuck in a quagmire. Many people thought that Wei Yunchu left the country 5 years ago because Tian Tian tried to drive a wedge between them. She wanted to make Wei Yunchu and her misunderstand and blacklist each other. But only Pudding, Wei Yunchu and Little Bean knew the truth. 5 years ago, before Wei Yunchu left the country, he confessed to Pudding. But Wei Yunchu knew who he wanted to be with for the rest of his life, so he invited Pudding to go abroad with him. He wanted to marry her after graduating from college, but Pudding refused. Wei Yunchu wasn't angry even though she refused. He just thought that Pudding was too young and wanted to wait. But what he didn't expect was that Pudding kept saying that there was someone she couldn't forget in her heart. This caused Wei Yunchu to break down. All these years, although he didn't know the truth, he could vaguely feel that Pudding was sometimes absent-minded and sometimes depressed. It must be because he had something on his mind, but he didn't expect that there was someone hidden in his heart. Little Bean also knew about this. The sisters naturally wouldn't tell him who this person was. Wei Yunchu thought that it was a boy that Pudding had a crush on in school. After suffering a serious blow, he went abroad. For the first and second years he was just angry and didn't want to come back. After a long time, the two of them really drifted apart. They had not contacted each other for 5 years. They had even blacklisted each other and were unwilling to listen to each other's gossip. On the surface, everyone thought that Wei Yunchu had abandoned Pudding and left the country. In reality, it was Pudding who rejected Wei Yunchu, forcing him to leave the country in despair. The whole thing had nothing to do with Tian Tian. She just happened to go abroad with Wei Yunchu and was associated with some things. After Wei Yunchu left, Pudding regretted it. She even envied Tian Tian for being able to stay by Wei Yunchu's side. What she didn't know was that Tian Tian didn't receive any warmth from Wei Yunchu. Wei Yunchu was an extremely cold person. Although he wasn't as cold as Qin Chu, he was extremely difficult to get close to. All these years, only Pudding could truly enter his heart, but in the end. Chapter 4861. Little Bean, I think I've really gone crazy. Because I don't even know if I miss Handsome Sue, if I'm obsessed with him, if it's the admiration between a man and a woman, or if it's the reliance I have on him since I was young. After saying this, Pudding's tears fell. Pudding's EQ was much higher than Little Bean's, even higher than that of ordinary people. However, the onlooker sees more clearly than the player. Now that she was deeply involved, she had completely lost her direction. The problem that had been bothering her for years was that regardless of whether Suyu was around or not, she didn't know what kind of feelings she had for Suyu. Back then, Wei Yunchu confessed that he wanted to go abroad with her. It wasn't that she hadn't thought about it, but she just felt that if she just went abroad and ignored everything, then Suyu's last memory in this world would be gone. Other than her and Little Bean, no one else would remember Suyu. Dwelling on this matter made her lose sleep and suffer. There was even a period of time when she frequently dreamed of Suyu. She dreamed of how Suyu doted on her and Little Bean when they were young. In the end, Suyu promised to take them to Tokyo Disneyland. That wish didn't come true. What Pudding couldn't stand the most was that the woman Suyu loved the most in his life, his mother, Huamin, actually forgot about Suyu. Many times, when she was about to say something, she wanted to remind her mother. She wanted to remind her that there was a man in this world who had disappeared in order to fulfill her happiness. However, she knew that once some words were said, they couldn't be taken back. If her mother remembered everything, then her mother would continue to be in pain, and there would be an irreparable wound between her and her father. Therefore, Pudding, who was conflicted and in pain, lost Wei Yunchu from 5 years ago. Now that she was about to turn 18, everything she did was to awaken everyone's memories of Suyu. Others might not understand, but Little Bean understood. She felt that her sister's actions were extremely selfish. That was why he scolded her, hoping that she would wake up. So what if it's true love? Pudding, Handsome Sue is gone. He left us. It's been so many years. Please let go of Handsome Sue and yourself. You've already made Wei Yunchu too scared to go home for 5 years. Do you still want everyone to spend the rest of their lives crying for Handsome Sue? Little Bean's words were like a hammer that slammed into his chest. Pudding listened, but she didn't want to let go. Little Bean, if we both forget Handsome Sue, he will disappear from this world forever. I haven't forgotten. He has always lived in my heart. But I'm not like you. I'm not possessed. You want to use your memories to kill yourself and the people around you. Pudding remained silent. I'm warning you for the last time, Qin Zhao Zhao. If you make Mom and Dad suffer because of your selfishness, you're not my sister. I'll hate you for the rest of my life and never forgive you. I think if you make Mom suffer, Handsome Sue won't forgive you in the other world either. After saying this, Little Bean turned around angrily. She didn't want to persuade Pudding anymore. She couldn't understand what Pudding was doing. If Pudding really wanted to revive everyone's memories of Handsome Sue, then she really wouldn't forgive her. After Little Bean left, Pudding turned around and wiped her tears. Just then her phone rang. Boss, I'm at the entrance of South Hill Manor. Can I come in for a cup of tea? Liao Mukin said in a teasing tone. Chapter 4862. Liao Mukin came without any warning. There was no signal at all. He swaggered to the front gate of South Hill Manor and sat in a black van. Since he was already at the door, Pudding had no reason not to pick him up. At the front entrance, Mississippi, the security guards greeted Pudding respectfully. She nodded slightly with a cold face and walked directly to the black van. When Pudding arrived, the door opened automatically. Before Pudding could speak, Liao Mukin said, "It's my own idea. My agent and assistant don't know. I sent them away." "What do you want?" Pudding looked at him with a trace of annoyance. She had just quarreled with Little Bean because of Suyu. It could be said that ever since they were young, Little Bean had always quarreled with Pudding, but she had never scolded Pudding as seriously as she did just now. This was the first time in 18 years. Pudding's heart was really fragile. It seemed that Little Bean was also annoyed by her. Pudding had just caused a storm between sisters because of Suyu, and this guy came to her door. If there was anything good about Liao Mukin, it would be Pudding. From Pudding's point of view, the only thing left was this face that was similar to Suyu's. "Boss, I really just want to join in the fun. I haven't eaten yet. Can I have dinner? I heard that your dinner is always very fancy." The guy had a playful look on his face. He looked like a little ruffian. Pudding sometimes didn't understand why he had so many female fans. How could he compare to Suyu? He couldn't even compare to one of his fingers. He didn't have handsome Sue's dominance and arrogance, nor did he have handsome Sue's elegance and affection. However, since he was already at the door, there was no reason to reject him. In the end, Pudding acquiesced and let him in. The dinner party at South Hill Manor had more than 100 people, including family members, guests and servants in the manor. So, it shouldn't be a big deal to have Liao Mukin, right? Pudding thought. However, she soon realized that she was wrong. This guy attracted everyone's attention as soon as he entered the door. "Io, isn't that the little fresh meat that's been very popular recently? Why is he here?" Gao Buyuan's sharp eyes immediately spotted the man beside Pudding. Liao Mukin might have come prepared today. It was not as simple as a freeloader. Therefore he was not wearing his usual casual jeans. Instead he was wearing a black suit with cropped trousers. It was very fashionable. There was also a small wine-red bow tie on his collar. It was cute and playful, which matched his age very well. After seeing Liao Mukin, Little Bean's expression changed. In the end she didn't say a word. Instead she pretended to lower her head and not look at him. On the other hand, Chiao Tuanchuan crossed her arms and said word by word, "Liao Mukin, the most popular artist under GK Entertainment. I heard that his salary has exceeded 200 million yuan, and he's the youngest and most valuable male artist in the country. He's also GK Entertainment's cash cow and Pudding's new favorite." Chiao Tuanchuan smiled. "I don't know if he's a new favorite or not, but I'm guessing that Pudding doesn't treat him well." Seeing how Pudding purposely kept her distance from him, it was obvious that Pudding didn't like this guy very much. "Holy shit. Liao Mukin. He's so fucking handsome. No, I have to take a picture with him and post it on my WeChat moments." Tang Qinjiao rushed over. Other than posting it on his WeChat moments, there was nothing else in his mind. Chapter 4863. Young Master Tang did as he said and stood in front of Liao Mukin. "Liao Mukin, I'm your fan. Can I take a picture with you?" Before Liao Mukin could say yes, the kid put his arm around Liao Mukin's shoulder. Then he took out his phone with one hand and forced himself to take a picture. Pudding shook her head helplessly. She didn't even look at them. "Fuck. You're pretty good looking." Tang Qinjiao pointed at Liao Mukin and said, "Thank you." Before Liao Mukin could finish thanking him, the kid interrupted him. That guy continued, "I think we're on par, although you're a little less charming than me." Liao Mukin awkwardly took back the second half of his sentence and scratched his head. "Do you mind if I post it on WeChat later?" Tang Qinjiao asked as he edited the picture with his head lowered. "I don't mind, but can you beautify my face?" His words amused young Master Tang. "Of course. Don't worry, bro." Tang Qinjiao waved his hand and ran away, afraid that Pudding would scold him. Then the kid posted a very arrogant WeChat moment. It said, "Ran into Liao Mukin. He's good looking, but he's not as charismatic as me. Ah." It was really young Master Tang's style to add 3 ha 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 after a cool sentence. This little joker was indeed the son of Tang Chuan and Qin Ning. He was always full of energy and couldn't stop. Tian Tian also had Tang Tianjiao's WeChat. She saw his post on WeChat. She immediately took a screenshot and sent it to Wei Yunqiu. She thought Wei Yunqiu was far away in the States. "Yunqiu, I saw Liao Mukin go to South Hill Manor today." "So?" This time Wei Yunshu replied within seconds. Tian Tian was overjoyed and continued to add fuel to the fire. I've heard that he and Pudding have an ambiguous relationship. Now that she's bringing him home, he must be meeting her parents. Yunshu, you should let go of the past. Some people aren't worth waiting for, really? Wei Yunshu ignored her. Qianqian's words weren't trustworthy. Wei Yunshu already knew this. Wei Yunshu also had Tang Tianjiao's WeChat, so he saw the photo he posted. The rumors about Pudding and the male artist under her company had been spreading like wildfire for half a year. Most importantly, Pudding had indeed given him a lot of resources. Wei Yunshu looked at Liao Mukin's photo and had to admit that he was quite good-looking. But did Pudding really like such a shallow guy? After not seeing her for 5 years, had she really forgotten everything from the past? Inexplicably, Wei Yunshu's heart felt stifled, and his hand that was drinking coffee stopped in mid-air. Son, does this dress look good? Jiang Xiaowei came out of the fitting room and looked at her son gently. Not bad. How does it compare to the one just now? Anything is fine. Then which one should I wear tonight? This one, the color is brighter. Auntie Huamin will like it, Wei Yunshu said gently. Jiang Xiaowei nodded and smiled at the shop assistant beside her. Since my son said they are all good, then pack them up. Iron this one, I'll wear it later. Okay, Mrs. Wei. After shopping with her son, Jiang Xiaowei looked at her watch. It's about time. I have to go. Do you want to come with me? Jiang Xiaowei asked tentatively. I'm not going today. I have an appointment with a friend. The driver can drive you there. I'll stay home tonight, don't worry. Okay, don't be too late. Jiang Xiaowei had always respected her son, so she didn't say more when she saw that he didn't want to go with her. At South Hill Manor, huh? Who's that pretty boy next to Pudding? Zhu Lingling didn't see him clearly at first glance. Hearing her words, Huamin also looked through the crowd, and when she saw the face clearly, she found it strangely familiar. Chapter 48-64. Zhu Lingling didn't realize who it was until she saw him clearly. Oh, I remember now. He's the little boy who's very popular recently. He's good-looking. Lingling, who's he? Huamin didn't pay attention to celebrities and gossip, so he didn't know who was popular recently. No way. Are you so backward now? He's an artist under your company. An artist under my company? Huamin was even more confused. He works for Pudding and is very popular. I heard that he has tens of millions of fans. What's his name again? It was right on the tip of my tongue, but I forgot. Zhu Lingling was also confused and didn't understand. Huamin felt very strange. He put down his work and walked over step by step. He couldn't help but want to get closer to the little boy. Mom? Behind him, he heard Little Bean's voice. Huamin turned around abruptly. What's wrong? Little Bean? Mom, I miss Grandpa. When is Grandpa coming? I haven't gotten through to your auntie, so I'm not sure yet. Huamin couldn't do anything about her father. He was very secretive and was even harder to find than Lu Yen. So, she wasn't sure if her father would come to the twins' coming-of-age ceremony. Okay. Really? When Grandpa comes, I'll teach him a lesson. Oh. By the way, Mom, didn't you say there's pine nut custard tonight? Why didn't I see it? Come with me. I want to get more for Tuan Tuan and Yuan Yuan. It's on the table next to your Auntie Lingling. Huamin pointed at Zhu Lingling. Mom, come here. I have something to tell you about the hospital. Little Bean pulled on Huamian's arm as she spoke. Just like that, she easily got her mother to move to the side. Pudding took Liao Mukin out of Huamin's sight. Little Bean didn't know if her sister was crazy or not, but she brought Liao Mukin here without a word. She had seen her mother's blank expression when she looked at Liao Mukin just now. She would never remind her mother of Suyu. Absolutely not. Pudding also saw Little Bean stop Huamin halfway. Thinking of Little Bean's advice, Pudding pulled Liao Mukin to a corner. There's a buffet here. Take whatever you want and leave as soon as you're done. Boss, do you really not welcome me? Liao Mukin smiled on the surface, but in fact he felt a little sour in his heart. Pudding's face was cold. When she said those words, it was as if she was chasing a dog. If it weren't for his thick skin, he really wouldn't have been able to swallow his pride and immediately turn to leave. I didn't invite you. All right, I'll eat something quietly and then leave. You have a lot of guests in your house. Go do your work, don't worry about me, I won't cause trouble. Seeing that Pudding didn't seem to want to accompany him, Liao Mukin took a plate and planned to eat something. You better mean what you say. Pudding glanced at him and then turned around. At the door was Jiang Xiaowei, who was late. Xiaowei, where's Wei Liao? Gao Ran happened to be at the door. Seeing her alone, he couldn't help but feel a little strange. He's still talking to a client. I don't think he can come. I'm the only one here today. Just in time. Come and sit down, Sister Xiaowei. Qin Ning also held Jiang Xiaowei's arm very intimately. Just as they were about to sit down, Pudding came over and took the initiative to help Jiang Xiaowei get a set of cutlery. When she looked up and saw Pudding, her eyes were a little complicated. She actually really wanted Pudding and Yunshu to meet and talk alone, but... Chapter 4865. Thank you, Pudding. Any Xiaowei eat more. The food tonight is especially delicious. Pudding smiled elegantly. Yes, I'll eat more. Pudding? Yes? Have you contacted Yunshu? Jiang Xiaowei probed. Pudding's expression froze slightly, and then she smiled awkwardly. Not yet, but I heard from my brother that they met in Germany not long ago. Yunshu seems to be very busy. You guys grew up together and there's nothing that can't be resolved. In other words, even if there's no possibility of development between you two, you'll still be friends in the future, right? Yes, Auntie. Yunshu and I are friends no matter what. Pudding didn't want to disappoint her elders. She could tell that Auntie Xiaowei had been very good to her all these years. Auntie Xiaowei even favored her more than Little Bean. Perhaps it was because she had long believed that Little Bean and Yunshu were a couple. Therefore, in this situation she felt quite guilty. Okay, let's eat. We'll talk about this later. Seeing that Pudding's attitude was good, Jiang Xiaowei felt that there might be a chance between the two children. After all, she could tell from her son's eyes that he couldn't let go. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suddenly returned to the country on the eve of her coming-of-age ceremony. It was obvious how important Pudding's coming-of-age ceremony was to him. Liao Mukin was indeed obedient. He hid in the corner and didn't attract Huamin's attention, nor did he cause any commotion. He sat quietly and ate his dinner, enjoying it quite a lot. Perhaps he was too engrossed in his meal, so he didn't notice the person behind him. A girl's voice sounded behind him. He turned around and was about to call out, "Boss," when he suddenly realized that this girl's clothes were different from his boss's. Her hairstyle was also different. Upon closer inspection, he noticed that her temperament was also different. "I know. You're my boss's sister. Congratulations, you even know how to answer first." Little Bean smiled and sat down beside Liao Mukin as if she was familiar with him. Liao Mukin had been at GK for a long time, but Little Bean, who liked to gossip and chase after celebrities, rarely interacted with Liao Mukin. It could even be said that this was the first time the two of them had met alone. Subconsciously, Little Bean didn't want to see this person. She didn't want to think about handsome Su and be sad. Just like Pudding, Little Bean's feelings for Su Yu were very deep. Sometimes Pudding would face it, but Little Bean only wanted to escape. Looking at Liao Mukin's face from such a close distance, Little Bean realized that he really did have handsome Su's charm. After only 3 seconds, Little Bean felt a lump in her throat and lowered her head. "What happened to you? Not in a good mood?" "Oh, it's not that. It's just that there are a lot of people at home these days, so I'm a little tired." Little Bean tried to lower her voice. "You really look like my boss." Liao Mukin sighed. "Isn't that obvious? We're twins. If we don't look like each other, why would we be twins?" Little Bean laughed. "You have a different personality too. You're more cheerful. My boss has a different face every day. She's bitter and hateful. It's like everyone owes her 8 million yuan." Liao Mukin bit his chopsticks and started to eat the black pudding. "That's not right. With my sister's current wealth, owing her 8 million won't make her angry. It'll probably be 800 million. After Little Bean said this, Liao Mukin also laughed. "By the way, did my sister bring you here?" Little Bean asked casually, but in reality she wanted to know if Pudding did it on purpose. However, Liao Mukin shook his head. "No, I shamelessly came here. My boss had no choice but to let me in." "Why did you do that?" Little Bean froze. "Because I like my boss." He still said this in a joking manner. Little Bean was even more shocked when she heard this. Chapter 4866. Little Bean was obviously even more shocked by Liao Mukin's words. "Really? Don't lie to me. This world is so strange. What I usually tell the media is all lies. I don't mean it, but the media and fans believe me. Now that I'm telling you the truth, you don't believe me?" "No, I just think that it's a little too sudden, abrupt. Do you think someone as excellent as your sister doesn't deserve to be liked?" Liao Mukin thought Little Bean was very cute. "Of course not. My sister is excellent, but you and her." Little Bean hesitated and didn't finish her sentence. Liao Mukin wasn't stupid and knew what she meant. He smiled slightly, put down the teacup in his hand and wiped the corner of his mouth. I know. You want to say that I'm not good enough for her. After all, my family background is not good. I'm not from a famous family and I'm not very good looking. My wealth is nothing compared to hers, and I'm a few years older than her. Liao Mukin laughed at himself. That's not what I meant. It's hard for people to get close to my sister. Little Bean looked at Liao Mukin seriously. Hard doesn't mean it's impossible. Sincerity can move metal and stone. Okay, if you're so patient then keep trying. But don't say I didn't warn you. Be careful not to break your glass heart. Sorry, my heart isn't glass. It's diamond, Liao Mukin teased. If a diamond is damaged over time, it will also shatter into pieces. You don't have confidence in me? Liao Mukin looked at Little Bean and smiled bitterly. No, I don't have confidence in my sister. Anyway, good luck. Alright, there's one more thing. I want to ask you. Little Bean finally told Liao Mukin why she came to see him. What? If possible, please stay away from my mother. Don't let her see you or notice you. As for the reason, don't ask. I have my reasons. Okay. Liao Mukin didn't think it was difficult, so he nodded slightly. Thank you. Then Little Bean turned around and left. Her conversation with Liao Mukin was a little secretive, so no one noticed. Liao Mukin did abide by the gentleman's agreement and did not let Huamin notice him again. Before he left, he really wanted to say goodbye to Pudding. But from afar, he saw Pudding standing beside a couple of old men. She was happily talking about something, and from time to time she would mischievously stick out her tongue. That kind of scene could never be seen in the company. In the company, Pudding was just like her father. She always had a cold face. Although she was young, everyone was afraid of her. Liao Mukin didn't know that the old couple that Pudding was coaxing was the Su couple. He just envied those people from the bottom of his heart. If one day Pudding could also put down her mask and smile at him without fear, he would be very happy, right? Liao Mukin thought as he walked out in a low-key manner. He didn't expect to meet the young master of the Qin family here. Although Qin Guoguo was young, he wasn't short at all. He leaned against the door lazily. Leaving so soon? Yeah, I'm full. Liao Mukin was also puzzled. It was their first time meeting, but they seemed to be very familiar with each other. He knew this kid. He had seen him in photos. There was a family photo of 5 in President Qin and President Qin's office. This kid was standing behind the chairman's wife. He must be the legendary young master of the Qin family, Qin Yuyao. Don't you want to say goodbye to my sister before you leave? Qin Guoguo asked him. Chapter 4867. It's okay. My boss is very busy and won't pay attention to me. Okay. Bye. Bye. Liao Mukin waved his hand. Will you come tomorrow? Qin Guoguo continued to ask him. That depends on my boss. I heard that invitations to the coming-of-age ceremony are very hard to come by. So many rich people in the city can't make it. I think I'll have to depend on my luck. Liao Mukin felt that Pudding's attitude towards him today was neither warm nor cold, as if she didn't welcome him. Why would she let an extra person like him come to the coming-of-age ceremony? If you want to come, you can call me. I'll bring you in, Qin Guoguo said word for word. Liao Mukin was stunned. Are you surprised? Qin Guoguo smiled when he saw Huamian's surprised expression. Indeed. I'm flattered. This is the first time we've met. There's no reason for you to be so nice to me. If I told you that I feel very familiar with you as if I've known you for a long time, would you believe me? Qin Guoguo asked. Before Liao Mukin could respond, Qin Guoguo smiled again. I don't believe it myself. Then Qin Guoguo turned around and walked inside as if he hadn't said anything to Liao Mukin. Huamian stood there dumbfounded. He thought to himself, the Qin family is so weird. Pudding and Little Bean are like that, and so is Qin Guoguo. As for why Qin Guoguo was so interested in Liao Mukin, who he had just met for the first time, first it was because of the rumors about him and his sister. Second, he saw his mother walk towards the kid curiously, but his sister hurriedly stopped her. Third, when he saw the kid's face, he felt like he had seen him before. It was an indescribable feeling. If Pudding and Little Bean enjoyed Suyu's love for a few years, then Qin Guoguo was actually sad. When he was in Huamin's stomach, Huamin was already in danger. When he was about to be born, something happened to Suyu. He had never met Suyu face to face, so he had no idea what Suyu had sacrificed to protect him and his mother when he was in Huamin's stomach. Therefore he did not know what Suyu looked like, nor did he remember Suyu. Regarding his name, the U in the middle of Qin Yuyao's name, the family seemed to have forgotten the original intention of naming him. Liao Mukin left South Hill Manor quietly. After he got into the van, he sent Pudding a WeChat message. "Boss, I'm leaving. Thank you for dinner. I'm very full." Pudding was chatting with the two elders of the Su family, making them happy. When he saw the WeChat message, his eyes darkened, but he did not reply. He put down his phone and continued to accompany the two elders of the Su family. That was why gossip was unreliable. It was rumored that Pudding and Liao Mukin were in love with each other. Now, all they had to do was wait for Qin Chu and Huamin's approval. But what was the real situation? Not only did Pudding not have a good impression of Liao Mukin, she even had a little bit of hostility. It was the feeling of rejection. After dinner and seeing everyone off, it was already 10 p.m. Lu Yen was a person who could not stay idle. She brought her husband, daughter, and even the twins in Qingguogua. The whole family went to the nightclub. Fortunately, the nightclub was one of Tang Chuan's businesses and was not dangerous, so Huamin agreed. It was late at night. Huamin finished cleaning up with the maid and leaned on Qin Chu's shoulder tiredly. "Honey, I'm so hungry. Why do I feel like I'm not full?" "Then let's go out for supper." "Now?" Huamin was surprised. "You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."